I was a professional footballer, played for Spurs. Skinny was like, I want that one, and that one. I'll be surprised, nobody thinks they're the tracks I want. And I'm like, yeah, he knows what he's doing. Because there's a crazy white kid with the gold teeth. If you put it out, we're going to do a cease and desist. We're going to contact Radio 1. We're going to sue you, and it's never going to see the light of day.
But you know why he took your job on?
Why?
It's because he robbed me of some money.
Welcome to the music industry. And there are tastemakers and there are gatekeepers. And if you're coming from a hip-hop background, more than likely you're not going to have access to those people. With someone like Thad, what that guy did for hip-hop culture in this country is massive.
The Sidney Poitier of UK hip-hop.
I've left home to find my fame and fortune, and I've taken a blanket and a carton of orange juice.
Oh my God, I never got back to him. Welcome back to the 521 DocuChat. Our guest today is a producer from the East Midlands who is much more than just about the music. Through his works, he's always been about creating movements that can bring about positive change in the world. But he's not all talk. He's set up businesses based around that entire ethos, and to this day is as active as the day the idea was conceived decades ago. I'd like to welcome to the 521 DocuChat my good friend and musical collaborator, the change maker, the legend that is Baby J.
What's the deal? I like that intro. Can we do that again? I love that intro.
Oh, you want me to?
What's the word?
5 years. I've been talking to you about getting you in here.
We were talking about this earlier, and like, I'm gonna have to go back through messages because I was like, why have we not done this before? Like, we actually have an album together, and we haven't actually done this. So
yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. You were one of the first people that I did contact and say, look, I'm doing this. You got to come down. I'm going to
dispute this, but
well, you can dispute
it's family. Like, if you're doing something, it's like I'm doing it. If I'm doing something, it's like you're doing it, because that's how we move. So 521 is my channel. Baby People's your thing. It's family. It's a family.
Yeah, it's always, you know, once we create something like the album that we did and whatever, then that's family for life, isn't it? So it's always, with us, it goes deeper than the music. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of common practice with anyone who's matured enough to do them things.
You're crazy enough to stay in it long enough.
Obviously, we all know you're a producer, and people outside of Derby are beginning to find out about the Baby People thing bit by bit. And obviously, everyone in Derby knows what you do. Like, whenever the word Derby comes into any equation, first thing that pops into my head is 5 Lamps and Baby J. But look, we don't know much about Baby J because, you know, I mean, I know some bits and pieces, but in general, there's not really that many interviews that's really opened up the way I would like for you to kind of show yourself today.
No doubt.
I don't want to say where do we start, because that's the common thing, but I think people need to know your background before we go into...
Yeah. I mean, I say I'm from Derby. My family's from Grimsby originally. I moved there when I was about 5. And I suppose there's, you know, sometimes like like Farma or certain people, it's like their dad was in a band or this or the, you know, mum collected, like there was none of that with me. So there's no reason really that I should have got into hip hop or black music, but my family wasn't, you know, it wasn't a household where anyone played an instrument or there was even a lot of music played. But I think I just hit a certain age and just listening to the radio, started to hear things like Lionel Richie and Prince and probably Michael Jackson and certain things, and be like, it just grabbed me. I'm like, what's this? And started taping the radio all the time. And around that time, probably the first bits of hip hop, I was, you know, like, it wasn't really on the radio, but you might see something on TV but it's back in the day, so there's no internet. It just, you caught it for that minute. I'm like, what was this? And I think just that black music always just, you know, like I always loved it from when I was young. And then I had a couple of older friends that were kind of putting me onto certain black music. And I was probably, I'm saying like 12, 13, that kind of age, right? And so it was like Parliament, Funkadelic, Sly and the Family Stone, you know, Rose Royce, kind of all the old, and there was kind of a revival of like rare groove around that period. So we're talking like the 80s, you know what I mean? At the same time, hip hop was coming out. And I kind of had an awareness of hip hop. So me and some of my friends will break into this block at dinner at school and practice breakdance moves. But we didn't know how to breakdance them. We didn't actually have any reference other than the one bit you might have seen on TV or something. And we kind of heard electro, but I mean, my school, it wasn't like a super diverse school. So it wasn't in a hood. So the kids in Derby that probably did, that were the breakdancers, the local crews and whatever, I didn't know them. Do you know what I mean? So I was kind of really interested in the culture and the music, but I didn't really know it. And then I had a couple of older friends that were, they gave me like the first Public Enemy, Yo Bum Rush the Show, and Boogie Down Productions albums, Eric B and Rakim. So I was like listening to that and then being into the rare groove. And just, every bit of money I had, when I got my pocket money or any money I could raise, I'd go and buy like a vinyl, and then I'd tape it and I'd take my friend's stuff and we'd just kind of learn that and stuff like that. And then I suppose the next thing really was there used to be a pirate station in Nottingham called Heatwave. DJ One Step Ahead, who's still an ill DJ to this day. Like we could just about get it in Derby, so I used to tune into that, and then it was like you started to hear about all the other MCs, your Stezos and Ultramagnetics and all these other type of music, you know what I mean? So that was like the start of my education. But what I started realizing was a lot of the music that was being sampled, I knew some of it from, do you know what I mean, the rare groove and the old soul and stuff that my friends were putting me onto. And so I was kind of like, there was this thing in the back of my head, like, I could probably do this, you know what I mean? Like, I've got some of these records, and what they're doing is they're just taking this section of the record. So it was a bit different, like, because I wasn't like from a household that made music or around loads of people that were into hip hop. I had some friends that were into it, but I didn't really have that exposure where someone was going, this is how hip hop's made. Do you know what I mean? But so I was just kind of piecing it together in my head, kind of working it out. And then I left home quite young. So I left home when I was 16. And I got to a stage where I bought quite a bit of vinyl, for a kid of my age or whatever. And I bought, first of all, one turntable, like a Sound Lab, do you know what I mean? The belt drive one. And then I got like a little mixer, and I had a boombox. And I moved into this flat, and my friend lived in a flat upstairs, and he had a tape deck. So what I used to do is borrow his tape deck for an evening, and I'd get a break, and I'd like play in the break, and then, count the thing, and then drop the break in again, and then record that onto one cassette, then play the cassette back through, and in the gap, I'd play the break again. Do you know what I mean? So timing wise, it was usually off, but that way I could kind of get a loop going, and that was like how I started my first piece. And it wasn't so much a thing of like, oh, I want to be a big hip hop producer and blah, blah, blah. It was more just like, I haven't got the money to go and buy hip hop records. Kind of find a way of like making my own. It's like going out to a restaurant and be like, I really like this food, but I don't know how to make it. Let me try and work it out at home. So I was just trying to be able to find a way of making my own music. And then I bought a little drum machine and a second turntable. I'm on the dole, but I'm doing it. So what used to happen is there were certain DJs in my town, Soul Syndicate, V Brown, and they were like the main DJs, yeah? But when people didn't have money for a DJ because I had records, they'd book me because I was cheap. Do you know what I mean? So, but I wasn't like a proper DJ. I was just when you didn't have money for one of the proper DJs for birthday parties or whatever. So they'd book me. And so I had a bit of money coming in from that. So I'd be like buying vinyl, and then occasionally I'd save up and get a piece of equipment. And then I had the two turntables and the drum machine. And when I got the first drum machine, I bought it off this guy called Carton Ninja. And he was like a house, an older black dude, and he was like a house music producer, like Detroit house, like the early stuff. And I remember saying to him, like, how does it work? And he was like, no one showed me. Like, go home and work it out. And that was kind of the mentality. It was like the hard knocks of you just got to work it out. I didn't even understand the concept of like how a drum pattern worked, let alone how to, it was a Boss DR550, and let alone how to like actually operate the machine, because it was like one little LED.
Is that the one that looks a bit like a calculator?
Yeah, it's like the grey thing. It's about this big. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. They were horrible.
It's got like a little
twizzle wheel. Yeah.
At the top.
No nice sounds in it at all.
Numbers at the bottom.
But I didn't even understand the thing of like the kick goes on the one and the snare goes on the two. Like so I'm like listening to records going, how do they? Everything was garbage. But what that did is that kept the time, and then I could because I could never afford two of the same records. Like when you see the New York guys and they're like, yeah, we took this Chic record. Like I couldn't afford two Chic records, so basically I used to take one and play it in, and then leave the gap, but it was in time, and then play the tape back, and then drop the break again, so I had the break. Then I might find a horn sound, put that over the top. That's how I started making beats. And then the next bit after that was my friend gave me this key. It was like a kid's keyboard. It was about this big, and it had like about 7 sounds on it. but had a little microphone, so you could put your voice in and say hello, and then you could play it up and down the keyboard. Hello, 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 hello. So you could do that. And what I did is I took it to pieces, and I got the wire going into the microphone and split the wire and wired it up to a phono cable into the back of the mixer so that I could sample straight into it. But because you couldn't edit the sample, it was like 2 seconds or something, and you just, there was no editing it. You had to spin the turntable with your hand and wait for the break to come in, and then press start, and you've got to spin it exactly the right speed so that when the break finished, the sample time ran out. So basically, you do it about 20 times to get it right, and then I had a loop, so I could play the loop into the tape deck, and then sample another sound and play that over the top. Do you know what I mean? So that's how I started making my first beats. So glamorous.
No, but you know what? That's as kids, we pretty much all found a way to do these things.
Well, this is like the essence of hip hop. It's funny because we'll get onto it. But obviously, we run the hip hop school now, and with a lot of the kids, younger artists and stuff, they understand that hip hop culture is something that like I say we as in the culture. We wrote on the side of trains because we didn't have galleries. We put lino down in the parks and
we just made things work.
Yeah, you just worked out, like whatever it was going to take to make it work. And, not that it was a plan, but in the same way I was doing that, we didn't have the money to buy equipment. Do you know what I mean? So, or very rarely. So often you're borrowing things off friends do you know what I mean? Just because you're working out in the best way you can. And again, because I wasn't like growing up in the Bronx, I was growing up in England. So I was listening to records and trying to work out how they were made and trying to recreate that. And a lot of the time getting it wrong. Like I remember I used to listen to like early Premiere, like, No More Mr. Nice Guy and those kind of things and and I thought that he'd sampled all these individual sounds to make it. So when I learned to produce, I wasn't taking a big break a lot of the time because I didn't think that's what they were doing. So I was taking a piano stab and like playing stuff in because I thought that's how they were making their stuff. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, you were kind of learning techniques of chopping and stuff just because you didn't realize that someone had just taken
And that's generally how you discover your sound.
Yeah.
Because, during exactly, during all of that, you're doing things slightly different to everyone else and not this, it's a unique way of working when you have nothing. But you take, like, I don't know, even your spoon and fork and create something with it. And, that's what hip hop did.
And I think that lack of resources, it's not only that you can create art, I think it makes the best art. I think there's something about...
Definitely the most creative.
Yeah, I mean, I've met a lot of people where they've, from day one, they've had a lot of equipment. And their ideas aren't there because it's like everything's kind of laid on for you. And I think I don't care what art form it is, like having those limitations, those pressures and having to work out ways of doing stuff, I think it means that the ideas part of it has to be much stronger because the other bit isn't. So I don't think like people are like, oh, I can't get in the studio. Like, especially nowadays, come on, you can do everything on your phone. You make a whole album. Like, it's like the less stuff you've got sometimes, the more your brain's got to work to find an ill way of doing stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Of course. You need to find ways.
That's hip hop.
Generally, when I ask people about their background, people will come out with, I wanted to be a professional footballer. I wanted to be a racing driver. And so did you just straight go into music or was there anything else going on?
I was a professional footballer. No, I wasn't. For a while, I did that. I played for Spurs. No. Nah, I don't know, man. I did it was a funny one because firstly, I'm from Derby, right? So Derby's it's a city just, do you know what I mean? But there's not much there, do you know what I mean? So it was there was no one, there was, like I said, there was the one guy I bought the drum machine. That was the only guy I knew that made music. And he made music in his bedroom, do you know what I mean? I think he eventually got some. Anyway, it wasn't like we were in London and someone's uncle's friend used to be signed to blah, blah, or so-and-so DJs in this club. There was kind of nothing. So all the guys, especially for hip-hop, all the guys that I knew that were the local, so there was a local, back in the days, every city had its own hip-hop crew. Derby's was Posse in Effect. So I looked up to those guys. And eventually I started working with some of those guys. And but there was there was no business, there was no career, there was no opportunities in this. Do you know what I mean? So I think I'm in a city where I kind of finished school. I never went college or uni or anything like that. And even with music, you never thought this is going to be something that I'm going to make a career out of. But it was what I wanted to do. And it kind of felt like when I was young that your three options were you're going to get a job that you hate, you're going to do some street stuff, or you're kind of going to follow your passion, but without any expectation that it's going to put any food on the table. And then the other two options were whack. Like I didn't want to work at, I did house removals for a bit, and I worked in a bar for a bit. Like I didn't want to do that. You know what I mean? It was like that was soul destroying. The hustling stuff is appealing to when you're young to a point, but also there were friends going away for 3 years, 5 years, and you're like, I don't want to do that. Do you know what I mean? So it's like I was like, let me just really drill into this music thing, and I was like, I'm in Derby. I'm a white kid in Derby, and in hip hop culture, especially at that time, that was quite rare. And and Derby's nowhere, so I'm not like in Brooklyn. You know what I mean? So I was like, the only thing, the way I always used to look at it is like, I've got the same amount of fingers and toes as everyone else trying to do this. You know what I mean? Like, so I just need to put in more work than everyone else. So I was just like relentless. It was just like, I was like, every minute I've got to be spent in thinking about this, focusing on this, working on. That's my only opportunity.
So did that come from you also having nothing?
Yeah, and I don't get me wrong, I don't want to be like, I had nothing, because there's even amongst my peers, there's a lot of people that grow up with things way harder than me. Yeah. Like at certain points in my life, things have definitely been difficult, but it's not like I was, I didn't grow up in the South Bronx, right? You know what I mean? But I think that, when you grow up in somewhere like Derby, there's such a lack of opportunity.
Obviously, I've been to Derby, right, many times. I've stayed at your house, I've stayed in hotels and whatever, and I see the same thing, which is basically not doom and gloom, but there's not much going on, like you said. So where do you find the inspiration? Describe what Derby's like and build it to the moment where you're like, I need to make a change.
So Derby's a small city. We're surrounded by mining communities and ex-mining. So obviously in the 80s, all that closed down. So you've got a lot of impoverished areas. There's a couple of big employers in Derby. So there were people there with good jobs. But at the same time, we've got some of the poorest wards, little areas in the whole country. We've got, even to now, we've got some of the highest NEET figures, like young people not in education, not in any kind of training, in the whole country. Highest teenage pregnancy in certain areas in the whole country. So similar to Nottingham, you know what I mean, parts of Leicester, there's some really rough parts. Now, you've got that in London, you've got that Birmingham, you've got that Manchester, but you've also got the creative industries in those areas. You've also got opportunities, you've got successful club nights. And Derby didn't really have those things. So as a young man, it was like you're out there and you're around people, and the only people that you've got contact with that are successful are the hustlers that are at a certain level. So they're the only ones with jewelry, cars, the pretty girlfriends that's it. There's no one that's like, oh, that guy went to uni and he's got this business now. We didn't know anyone like that. There's no one's uncle's friend that was. So there was a guy that locally did really well in boxing. So there was him, and then the other guys were hustlers, and no one else I knew had any money. Everyone else was broke. My inspiration was these records. I would go to the record shop, and I would get the Gangstar 12-inch or the Boogie R/P and Rakim or the whatever, and I'd be like, this is a thing. This is a real thing. These guys are doing this. So I was like, there must be a way I can do this. And it was crazy. I remember I started working with this guy, Koki, who was from Posse in Effect, which was the local crew, and NYT. And we started doing these demos. And I remember sending some demos out to the same labels that Gangstar was on. But it was actually, I think it was Cool Tempo, which distributed Gangstar in the UK. So it wasn't even their label, but I didn't know how the music industry works. And I remember sending it out. I sent like a D90 cassette full of beats, mainly instrumentals with a couple of tracks with rapping. And I remember just checking the post, waiting for the contract, so thinking like, they're going to hear, if they're like Gangstar, they're going to like me and I'm going to get a deal. Like, because I just, I didn't know anyone that knew anything about the music industry or any industry. Do you know what I mean? So you only know what you're getting on these things. But I'd see these things and I'm like, these guys are making this music. I've listened to theirs, I listened to mine. I'm like, mine isn't that bad. Like, there's got to be a space. So that was the inspiration. It was just that you knew that there was a culture out there. And you travel out of town and go to hip hop jams, and the different crews would be there from, your boys and that from
we'll talk about that,
from different cities. And so you knew there was this thing, and there was, there was characters like Goldie, and yourself and, do you know what I mean? Like Overlord X. So you knew there was this thing emerging, London Posse with the first EP. And that was the, wow, you know, like maybe I could be a part of this. Maybe I could be involved. So that was the inspiration. Just, it was there. It just wasn't within reach of us.
What you just said there just sparked off something in my mind, because I feel like the American artists are the people that we always looked up to because we were learning from them. You know, we didn't have the luxury of YouTube, rewind and whatever. We just saw what we saw at the time, and we learned, and we had to pick things up quite instantly, right? But you just mentioned Goldie, London Posse, myself, whoever, right? And I feel like the UK artists, you know, we've inspired a lot of people.
Yeah.
But we never get mentioned in the same way the Americans get. Like, we should have superstars. You know, like right now, people like Caveman and Hijack and Rodney P and Glade and Mello, and they should be superstars.
Especially for when you're out of London as well, because you got to remember, for us, we only really got access to, apart from the odd things that can't, you know, if you go Carnival or blah blah, you only got access to what landed in a record shop, right? So I remember the not the album, not even Money Mad, but the first EP that my beatbox reggae style that London Posse did. And I went around my friend's flat and he bought it and put that on, and that blew me away. I was listening to Bionic and P and that and Sipo, and I was like, this is crazy, because it was like they weren't rapping in an American accent. It was like London, UK, but it was this hip hop culture thing that I loved, and I was like, this is the most, like, it was just like, I remember that moment like how I felt to this day. Do you know what I mean? Same with Lyrical Maniac. When we first heard Lyrical Maniac, like, this is like the hardest thing ever. And it's from here. Do you know what I mean? Like, we could almost touch it. And then later, you know, your Hijacks, your Catch-22s, you know, Silver Bullet.
Hijack was actually before us.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And like Silver Bullet. And do you know what I mean? Like, you get these glimpses of stuff. And you're like, but it felt like, and then you could actually go to gigs, you know, if you had the money. And
But what I'm saying, though, is you've been, like myself, we've been on the side of being a fan. We've also been on the side of being the artist. We've also been on the side of being the people that innovated stuff, that changed the way things worked, right? So what I'm trying to get at with getting an answer from you is, we inspired you.
yeah,
Right?
MC Mello.
Right, MC Mello, a lot of
Overlord
us.
X,
So, you know, why did we never get the same kind of credits and respect?
Well, I suppose, look, the American scene, which came first, inspired, you know, your generation to start, obviously, breakdancing.
Yeah, but don't forget, we were making records the same time Big Daddy Kane was and Master Race was. They, you know, we were already on the streets from like '83, doing these things. So we were building ourselves into
but that American sound, or that American culture of hip hop, got global exposure.
Right. So okay, you said it right there. Global exposure.
Yeah.
So,
whereas the exposure for me as a young kid from Derby, for British UK hip hop culture, that came later. I found out about electro and breakdancing and graffiti way before I found out who Overlord X was. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it came later, but when it happened, it hit harder for me. And I'm sure 100 kids around the country, or thousands of kids around the country, it was more important to me than what EPMD was doing. I might have liked some of their music.
We were seeing that.
Yeah, but it was like the impact that Lyrical Maniac had, or London Posse had, or whatever, on me and my peers was like, I just, you know, I remember seeing Silver Bullet in the picture with the click suits, and we were like, how'd you do the pin tucks? Like, I got to find a click suit and do my trousers that way. And, you know, you study, you know, because you had no access to the culture. So you'd study everything, like a magazine article or something that you saw on TV, you know, like, you know, and even with the American stuff, one person would get a tape of your MTV Raps, and that tape would get copied by, you know what I mean? Like, everyone would get a copy and get passed around till it was worn out, because you'd watch every single thing of it, like what they were wearing, the language, the slang. But the English stuff was more interesting to us because it felt like, you know what I mean? It's like, that's who we want to be. And the English stuff was always different because it was always a mixture of like hip hop, but then the reggae, you know, the sound system culture, which was, you know, kind of part of the British experience. So our thing was, you know, like, you got your Ragga Twins and whatever that came out of. So it's like, there was always a mix, wasn't there, between like the Jamaican culture and the American hip hop culture. So we had our own sound, our own vibe. which like Bionic was like, do you know what I mean? Like the champion of, you know
Yeah,
what I
of
mean?
course, 100%. If I add something to that, is that when we saw, say, for example, LL Cool J, me as a young artist myself, even though I'm a couple of years older than LL, right? Me as an artist, I would look at somebody like LL Cool J and be like, he's that young, he's doing it, I can do it. But then when you started hearing people that are 2 miles away from you, you're like, if they can do it, I can really do this.
But and it's that connection in it to something that feels touchable. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, like Ultramagnetic MCs or Big Daddy Kane might have been like, wow, these guys are amazing. But Posse in effect in Derby was more important to me. I wanted to be down with them way more than I did be down with Big Daddy Kane, because that was just, it's like watching a faint, you know, like some movie superstar on a thing. It's just so unreachable to you. Whereas when you guys came out, I was like, I can actually go and see this guy at a show probably if he comes to town, which I did.
Do you want to talk about that?
Oh, yeah. So we used to go to, the thing is, here's the funny thing. I only found out years later it was your guys. We used to go out of time. There used to be hip hop jams in different towns, and you go with your crew. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, you know, like the streets are the streets, so things are still rough. But it was hard back in the days. Like it wasn't easy. You had to hold your own corner. And again, nowadays in black music, there's a lot, especially in hip hop, there's as many white kids as black kids. But back then, I go to a hip hop jam and usually I'd be the only white face in there. Do you know what I mean? So it was always kind of like, you had to kind of know your place, and do you know what I mean? A little bit. I'd saved up for this black and blue two-tone leather Adidas cap that I'd saved up for ages. And we got to, I'm trying to think where it was. I know Goldie was there on the night.
Was it Loughborough?
I don't know, it was somewhere in the Midlands. It may be Loughborough or Leicester. And we went down 2 card loads of us. And there was a little crew of us, but I was stood on my own somewhere. And this guy came up, which I've later found out he was with you, and said, let me see your cap. Me being naive, took my cap off, which I should have just been like, and done one. And looked at my cap. Then he grabbed my cap. He looked at me and was like, give me the cap. I was like, no. Because this
I know who it was as well.
Yeah, back in the days, well, give me his number. We need to have a conversation. But back in the days, that was like 2 months of saving to get the money for. I went to London to buy it. I don't know, it was 4-star General or somewhere, but I remember that cap was my pride and joy. So I was like, in my head, I'm like, you can take the cap, but you've got to beat me for it. Like, I'm not letting go. He's like, give me the cap. I was like, no, give me the cap, no. And I snatched the cap and I walked off, and he's like, wait and see. And he walked off over to his boys. So I went over to one of my guys who was a big dude, and I was like, yo, this guy's just tried to rob me of my cap. I think he's gone to get his guys. Da-da-da-da-da. And my friend just looked at me and looked over my shoulder at me and was like, just give him the cap. I was like, nah, I ain't giving him a cap. So I think one of us stuffed it down our trousers, and it went without incident after that. But yeah, that's how hip hop was. It was like, it wasn't easy back then, you know. Like, I know things are still rough now with the kids and whatever.
So that was our first ever meeting.
Yeah, and I think I remember you being there, but we didn't talk then, I don't think.
You reminded me in a conversation that, you know, I came over and was trying to get everyone to come to the front because everyone was standoffish.
That was a different gig. So you did a gig in Derby, and there was me, and you were like, you know how you do. You were like, come on, it wasn't like super busy. And you were like, everyone to the front, you know what I mean? Come forward, blah, 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 blah. And me and this other guy, T, who did the Black Samurai albums, he's like a dope artist and pulled everyone together. We were both at the back. You know, I was trying to be cool. And you were like, no, everyone needs to come to front. And you got off the stage and came over to us. And I came straight to front. He was 6 foot something. You weren't getting him to move easily. That wasn't going to happen. So he stayed exactly where it was. But I came to the front, and I think maybe we spoke afterwards. That was the first time I actually met you. But I was like, for me then, I was still like in fan mode, because like, you know.
So you weren't producing then?
I was producing.
Why didn't you say something? We're going to work together.
You know what? Like when I first started getting to the stage where I had beats, I used to go to, like, say, a Caveman gig or Son of Noise or whatever, one of your gigs. And a few times I was like, oh, I'm a producer, going to give you my tape. And the energy I got and the look I got was just like, psh, like, one, you're from Derby, secondly, you're white, we don't know. It was just like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, there was no love. And I was just like, yeah, I'm not going to get anywhere with this. And that's why I started thinking about, I need to send some stuff to the States.
Right.
Carnival, when you used to go Carnival, that was a whole energy. It's like anything could go down. But that's how hip hop was. Like, it was, like, nowadays it's rough, but I feel like the kids, the energy, like a lot of these kids are doing stuff because they're scared. Do you know what I mean? back in the days, it was like no one was scared. Do you know what I mean? So it was like anything could happen at any point, sort of things. So yeah.
Did you ever try your hand at rapping?
I tried once.
And?
Yeah, it wasn't. So basically, I think I got to the stage where I'd been out to the States. I'd done some stuff with Shabazz, a couple of other people. And I was like, you know what? I've been around this enough now. I made this beat. I really like the beat. And I was like, I'm going to rap a verse. So I wrote my first verse, spent time doing it and everything, spent the whole day. And then recorded it. It was late. I went to sleep. I woke up in the morning, played it back. I was like, don't ever rap. And deleted it immediately. But I say that, but there's like, obviously I've worked with that, and we've worked together. I've worked on that many things that like, in the same way that you've been around that many producers, that you're not a producer, but you might be like, the snare isn't sitting properly, or the, you know, like you'll know, or the chops ain't, you know, like you've been around. So there's many lines I've written in songs. Do you know what I mean? Where I'll be like, or, you know, I might be working with artists and be like, there's too many words in that line, or that I know what you're trying to say, but that's not going to be clear to people. You know, let's look at it. So, and part of the role as a producer is, you know, I mean, everyone says it, but there's beat makers and there's producers. So when I first started, I was a beat maker. And then at a certain point, you work with artists and you understand you've got a role to play past just delivering the beat and possibly mixing the track at the end, that, you know. And once you start to be empowered to do that, then you start to understand that you might, when you start making a beat, you might have a vision for the thing. So a lot of the time now I might make a beat and I've got like, I know in my head, I'm like, I know what flow roughly is meant, or I know what this track's meant to be about, or I know where the gaps are meant to be. You know, I know how busy this is, and is this as a woman? So you kind of have ideas. So with certain things, I always, you know, to me, the artist on the track, it's their track. So I will always give suggestions if I feel like I've got something to say. But ultimately, if say we're working together and you were like, no, I want to do it like this, it's your song. You're no one's going to go, oh, the Baby J track with Blade. They're going to go the Blade song. But so you kind of learn, and it's interesting. It's like, I remember when we did the album, and you were probably one of the most experienced, certainly in like years of doing it and different scenarios and working around big people, small people, you know, all different people in the game. Artists I've worked with at that point as an MC, but you were like, just tell me what you want. Like, and after every take, you'd be like, how was that? Whereas there were young dudes that I'd be like, maybe you want to be like, nah, I know what I'm doing. And I'd be sitting there thinking, you really don't, that sounds, you know what I mean? But it's like, you were open to like, let's try things. It doesn't mean you're going to do everything I say, but you know what I mean? I think that comes with time, that you kind of realize if you're collaborating with someone creatively, there's everyone's got something they can bring in that environment, and it's wise to listen to people's experience, and I think you only feel threatened by that when you're still in your mind, you're like, I've got to get my opinion across. Do you know what I mean? I think once you've been around for a while, you're more interested in what someone's going to bring to the table than what you're bringing to the table. Do you know what I mean? Because you're already confident in what you can do.
So do you think you attempting to rap kind of gave you a good understanding of how production works with rappers?
I think it gave me a good understanding of not to rap. But I think being around rappers, like, and to some extent, they say you can learn from your mistakes, right? But you can also, you know, if you're around someone, if you and your guy, you're rolling every day and that's your boy, you're close, and he's messing up, you can learn from your friend's mistakes. And if you're doing, you know, like, you know, there's certain artists that, you know, like Yogi, I've done 2-3 albums with, you know, so like being around someone, you know, you're around rappers, and if they're doing things that aren't working, you can learn. You don't have to do it yourself to learn. So initially when I was making beats, it was just like, I just want to make a beat that sounds like Premier's beat, or sounds like Eric Sermon's beat, or RZA's beat, or whatever.
But isn't that the way it always starts? You emulate
mimic,
somebody,
right?
and then you find yours.
You mimic, and in mimicking, you make mistakes, and in the mistakes, your style comes.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like, there were certain producers who was like, and sometimes it's not even produced, it might just be a beat. Like, it's small, like a lot of the time with any kind of creativity or art form, right, it's small steps. So, you know, someone might study Premiere and then they're going to do their own thing, but it's going to be a nuance, right? But I think with the UK thing, I felt like we really jumped. Like, if I listened to your Lyrical Maniac or listened to the first London Posse EP, it didn't sound like it was like we're mimicking America, and it's slightly different. It had its own complete own flavor.
But that was what we were aiming for.
Yeah, and I think it was a massive jump when it came here. Like, but that whole kind of authentic, and don't get me wrong, there was a lot of UK rappers with American twangs and all that we know in the early days. But I think that kind of real sense of here in black music is, you would have never got grime. Do you know what I mean? You would have never got drum and bass. You would have never got drill without that kind of identity from here that came from them.
You getting into the production, was that literally your primary focus? I mean, was there ever times where you were kind of looking at your friends on the streets hustling, and you were ever tempted to go down that road?
No comment, but no. I mean, like I said, I left home at 16 and I didn't really have a job. So I'm on benefits. I'm doing a bit of DJing that's bringing a little bit of money.
Did you leave home because of...
I just, you know what, like I
just wanted your space, or was there family issues there?
No, more that I needed my space. You know what it was? It was like, I think like some people, they followed, like you're going to go to school, you're going to get your exams, this is what's expected of you. And like from a young age, I was just like, why? Like you need to sit and listen to this lesson. Why? So even when I say I was at school, like the last few years of school, I didn't really go. And it wasn't like I was bad. I wasn't out there robbing kids or whatever. I was like, I don't see the point.
What are they teaching us?
I'm not going to attend. Like there's more interesting things for me to be doing, right? So I think, and I started going out to like bars and nightclubs where there was music being played, jazz nights, black music nights, like really, because I had older friends, they'd sneak me in and like at like 14, 15. I got my first job in a club at 15. Do you know what I mean? So like, I think, and my parents were kind of like, and they, we're still close. They were great parents, but I think they were kind of like, you're messing up your life. What are you doing? Why are you running around with it? So it was more out of respect for them of like, let me come from the family home, because I was rolling back in at 2 a.m. and they were just like, oh my God, you like 15? And so I was like, let me leave because it's rude doing this under your roof. So it was more of like a manners thing. And we used to skateboard and whatever. And I had a friend that was a bit older that worked in the skateboard shop. And I remember he was like, you can move in with me and probably get a job in the skateboard shop. And I asked the guy that owned it. He was like, yeah, I'll get you a job. I was like, great. So I literally, that night I left home. I didn't even tell. I went home and packed a bag and left a note saying, I think it said, I've left home to find my fame and fortune, and I've taken a blanket and a carton of orange juice. I left it on the kitchen table. It sounds funny, but apparently my mum cried, so I was a dickhead. But yeah, so I left home, so it was more out of that. But yeah, it was, yeah, so it was just, and then really that's when hard time, because I had my oldest son when I was 17. So I was like, very quickly, you're out in the world, and there's no money, and, I'm around black music and black culture, and, a lot of my friends are hustling and involved in certain things. And I was around everyone, even though I never really jumped into that lifestyle. So, and, because like I was DJing on pirate radio, I'm DJing in the clubs a little bit. So, people know you and they respect you. So I'm around some of the bigger dudes in the community that are doing certain things. So I'm around everything, but largely I'm not really involved in anything. And again, you just seen like a couple of our friends, like my close friends, they get locked up on a charge and they'd be away for like 3 years. And I'd just be like, I don't want that. And like, it felt like a lot of people around me, they didn't have other options. Whereas with me, I was like, I don't know how this is ever going to pay any money, but there's something else. And I think I'm good at it. So I was like, what I'd do is I'd get my dole check and I'd go and buy records, and then no money for food, right? Literally all my money would go, I'd go down to the record shop, buy records, and then I'd make a mixtape. And I had 2 tape decks, so I'd just make my own covers, make up the mixtape. Then I'd just run around with a bag of cassettes. And I'd sell them to the people that didn't, there's nothing on the radio, do you know what I mean? So they're buying the music off me. And the money from that was how I'd buy food, right? So that was like my little kind of hustle. And then what I started doing is every time someone dropped something with an acapella, because I'm learning to produce, I'd produce the thing. So it'd be like, blah, 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 Nas, Baby J remix. Blah, 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 Iman, Thug, Baby J remix. And then I started, because, back in the days, people would put their phone numbers on there or their address. So I started like getting calling cards and ringing states and going, can you do a little freestyle for me? And they'd kick a little freestyle and I'd record it down the phone and then produce the thing. And so I'm getting American rappers on my stuff. So the mixtape's selling because I got exclusives a lot. And it's a way of me getting my production out there. Then at the same time, I started working with, so I was working with Coke in NYT. Then I met Yogi, and Yogi was like, he was round away, but he was a young kid that came up. So his dad was on the sound system culture thing. And he was a young kid that was known for jumping on the mic at sound systems. Like, I think he was still at school or just out of school. And everyone was like, you need to meet this kid, Yogi. He's nice. He does reggae chatting. So I met him and I'm like, do you want to jump on some tracks? And me and him just clicked, like musically. Him on my beats sounded great. Like, I was like, this guy sounds dope. So we start, I mean, the problem with Yogi is, and I love him to bits, but he was not that motivated when he was younger. So I was always chasing him to get stuff done. But we started doing stuff, and then we got like some demos together. And then I was like, we tried sending stuff to UK labels and never got any interest. We tried giving stuff out to rappers like you, not you, but rappers like you. Everyone had just been like, psh, whatever, we don't care, you're from Derby. So I was like, let me send some stuff to the States. And at the time, KRS-One had Front Page, his little independent label. Wu-Tang had just come out with Protect Your Neck, and the address was on the thing, and for their Bay Street offices in Staten Island. And there was another label, I forget which one it was. So I sent out 3 demo tapes, and the A&R with me and Yogi on, and the A&R from Wu-Tang heard it, this guy Class, and he called me, and he was like, I heard your demo tape, I really like what you're doing, I want you to come out here for a meeting, we want to do some stuff Wu-Tang, but in the UK with you guys. And I was just like, I was like, this doesn't happen. This does, because we couldn't even get any love in London. Do you know what I mean? Like, no one was taking us seriously. We was doing bits with some of the Birmingham guys, so we started to make some links over there. So I was like, right, I've got to get to the States to meet Wu-Tang, who were like the newest, most, like, to me, they were like my favorite thing that was coming out. And I was like, how? So I went to see the one guy around the way who used to, fund the pirate radio station that had a bit of money. And I was like, Wu-Tang have been in touch. They want me to go out there. And he was like, I'll buy the tickets and we'll go. And I'll never forget that, because he didn't have to do that. Do you know what I mean? And back then, tickets, it was not like now. There's no £300 flights to New York. It was expensive. So me and him flew out there. The guy we couldn't get hold of the guy Class when we landed there. We didn't know where we were going. Neither of us had been to New York before or the States before. So we're wandering around Manhattan, like where we eventually I get him on the. So we took ourselves all the way to Staten Island, turned up at the offices. Moot was there, UGOB was there, blah 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 blah, and we still couldn't get hold of this guy Class. And they took us in the office, and he was like, so Moot was like, why are you here? And I was like, so Class has invited us over. He wants to do some stuff with us, blah blah blah. And Moot just did a sales pitch. He was like, yeah, okay, so we can distribute your stuff in this area. We can promote it. This is going to cost you this. I was like, no, you don't understand. He wanted to work with us. And I was like, oh my God, have I wasted this guy's money getting flights out? And then Class turns up and it's all love. And it's like, yeah, I want to work with you guys. And he introduced us to different people in the office. And I remember being in there and they had like the schedule of the different releases. So Methods Man album and then Raekwon's. It was all up on the wall of which singles. And I was like, wow. But you know what was crazy? Like coming from Derby to out there and being around it. And these were guys like us. They weren't like suit Harvard Law School. They were just round the way guys from the projects. And I was like, it made me realize that black music and hip hop culture was a business, that you could take it seriously. And that was the main education about the trip. So we went out, we came back, nothing really happened. And then Class left Wu-Tang, set up his own little independent thing. And he called me, this a few months later. I was signing on. And he called me in the door office and he was like, I want you to come out here, bring all your equipment, come out here for a few months and record with this new artist, Nitty Gritty I've got. So I went back to see my people, the same guy, and my other friend Johnny, rest in peace. And I was like, I got this opportunity. And they were like, we'll fund you. We'll pay the money for you to go. And again, this, like, if you've never been around street culture and how things work, like people talk about street culture like it's all bad, right? Like it's all negative. Like and there's parts of it that are bad, that are negative, that's not good for the community. But what people don't understand is that those little football teams that get sponsored and the play schemes and the like people, they come from them communities and they support those communities. And I was supported by people from them communities that were in a position to help that didn't have to and didn't really see any returns from that. Do you know what I mean? Really. So they sent me out there. And when I was out there that time, I was working with this artist, Nitty-Gritty, who's one of the best MCs I ever heard, who never came out. He had 112 out because things happen with the business or whatever. But then Class was also working with other artists. So at the time, my two favorite things was Shabazz the Disciple, Death Be the Penalty, and I'd heard this track by Dead Prez, Food Clothes and Shelter, and they're my favorite two tracks. And Class is like, oh, come with me to Lord Jamar from Brand Nubian's house, because he's working with these guys, and I'm doing something with Shabazz, like I'm going to work with Lord Jamar and Shabazz. So we went through to Lord Jamar's, and I was like, I love these two groups. And then Shabazz came through, and I'm like, oh my God, like, your track's amazing. Can I give you a beat tape? And Shabazz was like, yeah, cool. And like, you kind of, it was weird, because in the UK, no one took us seriously, because we were from Derby, I was white. But when you get on a plane, it's like, people take you seriously. Even though I was a white kid in Brooklyn or whatever, it was like, you got on a plane to come here, so you must be about your business. So there was like a different kind of energy about it, right? So people kind of took you seriously. Shabazz took a beat tape, and then Lord Jamar was like, I'm going to introduce you to Dead Prez. So then Shabazz picked a couple of beats. He was like, I really like these two. I want to do something to these. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And then I met Dead Prez, kind of built a bit of a relationship with M1 and Stick. And then I got a little distribution deal for a 12-inch. And I did that with Shabazz. I was like, I want to do it with this guy, Shabazz. So we put out a single and recorded something. And then there was this guy, Dave Paul, from Bomb Hip Hop. Yeah. So they used to do like the
Big
DJ.
up Dave Paul.
Yeah, legend in the scene from the Bay Area in the States. And through Wu-Tang, I met this guy called Dario Sanchez, who he did the Sons of Man logo and different stuff. He met RZA at some kind of convention and started doing artwork for them. He's a graphic designer, he's ill. And then he was like, oh, I do all the stuff for Bomb Hip Hop, the label. And he's like, I've played Dave Paul some of your stuff. He wants to do an instrumental album. And I was like, I want to do a hip hop album with rappers on. And he's like, well, speak to him. And I was like, Dave, I really want to do this thing. And I've got these rappers in the UK, Yogi, and we was doing stuff with Maurice Delta and blah, blah, blah. They're ill. And then I've got, like I know, like Shabazz the Disciple and Freestyle from the Arsonist and all these different people.
Dead Prez.
Yeah, Dead Prez. And Dave was like, I don't know, Kat. I've never really done a massive, like, turntablist stuff, right? And I was like, I think it would be dope. So I kind of talked him into it. And then he paid for the album. So, studio time and the trips to New York. So I was back and forth. And then through Dead Prez, I was saying to M1, like, do you know any of the rappers that they brought through ALX, this group I was met and did a load of stuff with them. And then there was like, like Fire and Shabazz introduced me Shaqueen and Bless and Arsonist. And so just like through networks of like up and coming New York artists. But then we put Yogi on it and G-Force, who was one of the original Posse in Effect guys, and Cypher from Maurice Delta 7. Because when I came back from the States, I kind of came back to Yogi and Moorish and those guys, and I'm like, listen, we need to take this way more seriously. Like, yeah, we're doing the art form, we're going in the studio and recording, but there's a business there. Because one thing like that really had an impact on me is Class. So Class wasn't a rapper, he wasn't a producer, but he was a young dude from the projects that was in hip hop, he was in the music industry, and I'd never seen that before. So I was like, and he used to, I remember we'd go to meet, he'd just take me around with him to meetings and stuff. We'd be driving into the city and he'd be like, who's on the radio next on Hot 97? I'd be like, I don't know. Like, and he was like, what do you mean you don't know? He says, this is your job to know. Like, you need to know who's on the radio, what they play. Like, you need to learn all this stuff because you're going to be around me. You're going to be meeting people. You're going to run into Naz. You're going to run into Ghostface. You're going to meet these different people, and you've got to know your business. Like, this isn't. It's not a joke. Like, and I was on the dole. You know what I mean? Like, trying to get weed-head rappers to turn up to the studio. Like, it was, to us, it was playtime. You know what I mean? Like, so learning that it was actually a business in the industry, I brought that back to the UK, and I was like, we need to take it way more seriously. And like, I think me and Cypher from Maurice Delta, we were the ones that like, let's really take this seriously and push it as a business. And me and him were like back-to-back years, like building and trying to just get into London and get on the radio stations and having like, because I've come back with like promo stuff for Dead Prez and Shabazz, and that got me into like the room with like your 279s or Westwoods or certain people to like, I've got their promo stuff, but let me play this Yogi stuff, or let me play this, you know what I mean, Maurice Delta 712 or Lyric Ball Click as they were there or whatever.
Two things I realized while you're talking. The first one being, I don't think I need to ask you any questions because you're doing well just talking.
Sorry. We've known each other a long time. I forget that there's cameras on right now.
The only other person I did that with was Dave VJ.
Yeah.
Because you know what I mean? He's got so many stories. Amazing. And the second thing, you know, when I was doing what I was doing, I was watching everyone being the artist, and I always knew that the business was lacking. So that's the reason why I set up 691 Influential. You know, I funded myself. I did whatever I did. I did my little hustling and whatever to get the money, dishwashing and everything else as well. And I saw all of that from early. But you came through a few years later. And it's crazy to think that all those years passed and none of the artists had got their business together still. That everyone was just thinking about the artist. And that you had to go all the way to America to be told you need to be on your business. And then you came back and you made some changes.
At that time in the UK, for hip hop, like, you know, your model of like, I'm going to press up my own records, I'm going to take them around the record stores myself, maybe I'm going to get a little distribution deal with Jetstar. I say deal, maybe I'm going to drop some records off to Jetstar, SRD or whatever, that'll put them around the country. But essentially, it's you doing them. It's you going to do the show and standing outside going, do you want to buy a record?
We didn't even do it that way. We just hit the streets. Didn't even approach the distributor, because I tell you, my mentality was, we don't need the record shops. Yeah. What we got to do is do it so that the record shops need us. And we made so much noise on the street that the record shops were all like, yo, we need some of your records. We need some of your records. And then that gave me the power and the control to say, you can have them. No sale or return though. You buy them now.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of artists also, I felt, fell to the wayside a little bit, because everything was sale or return. There was no priority for the record shop to sell it because they got nothing to lose.
But that
so
kind of...
I made sure they had something to lose, so they made it a priority to sell it.
That DIY business model, when I went to the States, we were still at that level. Like, you know, you was further on, you was more established because you were probably the biggest.
But I wasn't established when I was doing this earlier.
No, but by the time I went to the States, so you're talking like, I went there like 95, 96 for the first time. And you was probably one of the biggest UK, you know what I mean? So that model of, you know, you got like your Crispy Freeze and different people doing bits and bobs, but it would have been that kind of very DIY. Like, as the artist, you're doing every part of your business, you know, to whatever.
To the point where you're sacrificing some of your art itself. Yeah. At some point, I woke up and I thought, right, I don't care about being the best rapper. I just want to be the rapper that stands on stage and does the best performance and sells my product.
Well, even going out to the States and meeting someone like Class, and there was this guy, I think it was Jaheim, that ran Wu-Wear, or was setting up Wu-Wear at the time, and other people. I was like, these are people that are part of this thing. Some of them are getting paid, some of them might not have been, but they're not rappers, and they're not producers, or they're not DJs. So just this idea that there is a business outside of, that you haven't got to do it all yourself, was like, it was just revolution. And obviously America's much bigger. So in America, you know, you can go gold, platinum in your own state, you know what I mean? So it's like, you can be big in Brooklyn and, you know, get paid for shows and blah, blah. Whereas here in the UK, you've got to kind of have a national, do you know what I mean, exposure. So
I want to ask you a question based around how everybody made you feel in the UK when you were trying to open those doors. How did you feel? What was going through your mind?
I think, like any artist trying to get ahead, when we first started, it was just disheartening, because I'd go to a Caveman show or this show or whatever and be like, can I give you, and it was just, and I think then as well, being a white guy doing black music, it was different to now. There was no model for that. There's no Alchemist, or, you know what I mean? So you know, when I first started getting into black music, you very much knew your place. And that, you know, that's fair, and that's how it should have been. You know, I'm a guest in the room, whatever, I'm contributing. But I think, so yeah, it was just disheartening, because it was like, one, I was white. Secondly, I was from Derby. Thirdly, no one's heard of you. So it's just like, you was dumb, like, you had out these tapes and you just knew no one was ever going to listen to them. So it's like, how are we going to cut through the noise to actually get that first little thing? So, and then again, for the States to take you seriously before the UK. I mean, I got all my first releases were on American labels.
You know, I feel that's basically because in the States, they were about their business.
I definitely think there was definitely more of a business mentality, especially in New York, because it's, you know, economic capital of the world. And there was the models of, you know, like, new hip-hop didn't come out, you know, before hip-hop there was disco. there was funk, there was jazz, there was studio, there was all these models of black culture being successful, and I think there was an awareness of that. Is this can be something big? So when I was there, it was still very much a cottage industry. People weren't really making any real money, but like I said, you come from the UK. There's not cheap flights back then, so people are taking you seriously. Like, well, you must be someone if you're flying. And then I'm a white guy in hip hop, right? So at the time when I first went to New York, there was like me, Tim Westwood, and Benny Hill. But I remember being like, when I first used to go out there, I used to stay with Shabazz, and he was in Red Up Projects, and I was apart from the police, I was the only white face. When I first went out there, it was like, who is this crazy white guy walking through the hood at 2? Come here. But then your accent, it's like, wait, where are you from? Like, why are you here? I'm here with Baz and Nelly's uncles. And then by the time I left, I was like the mascot. Like, there's the crazy white kid with the gold teeth, it changes over time. Do you know what I mean? But it's just, America, it was a cottage industry, but there was that sense of this. Whereas I think the UK hip hop scene at that time was still, it was a bit tribal. It came from them days of like, this is our posse from this area. We're going to that area. We're going to battle. If it goes down, it goes. You know what I mean? If it gets messy in that, it gets messy in that. It was still that kind of energy, as opposed to actually we're going to in 5 years' time we're all going to be running businesses. I don't think anyone really looked at it like that. It was more like, how can I pay the rent and still do this hip hop thing? You know what I mean?
Let me take you back to that. I think you said 15-year-old.
Yeah.
That wrote a note, put it in the kitchen. Yeah. And told your mom, I'm going off to become somebody.
Yeah.
See, that's a brave move. Yeah. Right? And not many people are willing to take those kind of brave moves. Like, you moved out to basically make life not so much more difficult for your family, but to, in some ways, make it difficult for yourself. What made you feel like, yo, this is the moment where I can actually change my life, or you didn't even think that?
I don't even think I thought that. It was just kind of like, I think you get to a point where, and again, I'm in a small town, so it's just like, you just look around and you think, oh, this is bullshit. Like, whatever, like the GCSEs and the job, I'm not interested.
But you had nothing to lose.
So you had nothing to, not like it was like I was down and out and destitute. That was probably a little bit later where things were difficult. But it was more just like, whatever you're trying to get me to buy into, I'm not interested in it. But I can see this other thing happening. Like, I've seen Critical Beatdown album cover. I've been to a couple of clubs and seen like the cool dancers. And, I remember going we used to have this club 20th Century, which was like, they used to do coaches from London to Derby for 20.
And back in those days, we used to travel all over the place.
Yeah. Oh, that's
now
how
people ain't even traveling to their local store.
Yeah. So I remember, my friend used to work in the cloakroom, so he used to sneak us in. And I was probably like 14, 15, and we'd get in there. And there was the main room, Derek B performed there, I think London Posse performed there, different people. And then they had this like silent cinema room. And I remember going in there and there was like Posse in Effect, which was in the Kangols and the, you know what I mean, British Knights or whatever, you know what I mean? I was like Feelers, and I was like, wow, these, so I had something that to me was the most shiny, amazing thing in the world. I didn't think, oh, it's going to be a career, or
but
I just knew I wanted to be part of that. Like,
right, but what I'm saying is that there must have been that little inkling to know that this is worth taking a risk.
Yeah, because everything else was so dry and whack. It was like, what, you want me to get some GCSEs so I can go and work in a factory? Or
is that just the general consensus with most of the people down there? They end up working in factories and stuff. And
I just, there was no, and maybe it's different nowadays with social media and whatnot, but there was no sense of like anything interesting was going to happen with your life. But hip hop and black music culture was just this dynamic, exciting thing, and this is like the days of like the WAG and, do you know what I mean? Like the kind of club culture and that kind of independent and that black music influence on club culture was kind of really, it's kind of early doors, right? So it was like, I just thought there's somewhat real, and I had older friends, so they would be like going down to London to go to clubs and coming back and say, we went to this and da da da, and like the whole, and it's kind of like, wow, and pirate radio tapes and stuff, and you're like, wow, there's this thing happening, and it's just amazing. Like, I just want to be part of that. And yes, you'd have this idea in the States, there's breakdance and there's these hip hop groups and blah blah blah, but there's something happening in the UK as well. So, do you know what I mean? To me, it was like a no-brainer. Like, I'm not going to pursue that when this thing's happening over here.
Do you think the night that one of my guys tried to rob your hat changed your life in any way?
Nah, don't. Me and him need to have a conversation. I'm a lot older now, yeah? I don't care
Has he got your hat, though?
No, I kept my hat.
Okay, so what's the beef
No one
then?
listen,
What's the beef then?
Let's get something on record. No one ever got nothing off me. Never got robbed, ever. Yeah, so far.
So I'm not going to mention his name, but you should have done a better job at that.
Yeah. We'll meet again at some point. We'll have a conversation. It's all good.
Quite a few times. First of all, you mentioned about being a guest in this house and so on and so forth. And quite often you've mentioned being one of 3 white guys in this place and so on and so forth. Why do you feel that you need to kind of express that? I'm just curious.
Because, and again, I know this is like a hot topic a little bit and blah, 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 but I'm
not looking for the political side. I'm looking for your
no. I'm going to tell you how I feel. I mean, again, I grew up in a generation where when I got involved in black music, whether I'm going to a nightclub, whether I'm around friends that are making black music or whatever, there weren't, I wouldn't say none, but there was very few white people involved in the scene, right? And, black and white people mix significantly less than they do now. Do you know what I mean? I think London was a little bit different, but certainly you go to Birmingham, Manchester, Nottingham, Derby, communities were quite divided. And I think as my understanding of politics, of history, of culture grew, I was very aware that I was being part of someone else's, a culture that I was playing a role in, but it was someone else's culture. And I felt very lucky to be invited in someone's culture. And in the same way that if you travel to another continent that you've never been before, and someone says, come into my house, this is the food we eat, sit down with us, this is what we do, and you feel like welcome, you're blessed with that experience, right? And that's how I felt in hip-hop culture. Because the people I was around, they didn't have to have me in that room. It wasn't like I could go back to my own family or friends or my white friends and have that same understanding of culture. I got gifted the opportunity to be around people. And I think the reason I always mention it, I think it's important, because nowadays, you go to hip hop jam in London, right? There's going to be more white kids there than black kids. That's just, where hip hop's ended up. But there's a history of black culture through the ages. Once it becomes valuable, it often ends up being owned, controlled,
and diluted
by white people, diluted by white people. And that's not to say there's not white people throughout history that have been connected to black culture, that love black culture and have contributed and are in it for the right reasons. But the ownership of that tends to get taken, and the benefit doesn't end up going back to the black community, the African diaspora, whatever, of the people where the origin of that culture and that art form comes from. So the money that's being made out of hip hop culture, and what, let's talk in broad, the clothes we wear, the language, the beauty products, the TV, like hip hop culture is everything. It's the biggest cultural force in the world. How much of that financial benefit is going back to the black community? Or even if you want to say the black, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, and even some of the white, going back to those original communities, like, it's not. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and, because the black community doesn't control, largely, there's a few exceptions, your Jay-Z's, but largely they don't control not just the record labels, but the TV stations and the media companies and all these things that are in a position to exploit that culture and make money from it. They don't own big film companies and all those things. So when these corporations can look and kind of go, well, this hip hop thing's popular with the kids. You know what? Let's make some trainers, or Nike can go, let's make some sneakers that these kids will buy. Or let's do this, or let's do that. Let's sell the culture. They're not then going, right, we probably need to go and find Kool Herc and cut him a check. So then, I don't know Kool Herc's position, but then a lot of people that, and we see it now, there's rappers that, from the 90s, the 80s, noughties, whatever, that were like, that guy was like dope. And some of them guys maybe struggling to pay their rent. They're working regular jobs or still hustling.
Let me add to that, right? So a couple of years ago, I went for a meeting. I'm not going to mention the name of the people and whatever, but I was introduced. Let's just say somebody wanted to fund what we were doing with the channel. Mm-hmm. And I just, yeah, exactly. My cameraman's looking at us funny, right?
No, you've got your own water bottles. It's glitzy.
Well, what happened is I got invited to go to a lunch meeting with about 15, 16 of them. And it ended up being a complete waste of time for me personally because there was no conversation about the channel. But in the conversation, what ended up happening, so they said, Blade knows his hip hop. And I'm sitting in a room with all middle-aged white guys. There's not one black person in there, not one person of color of any sort. Yeah. And they said they're going to put out this, because they're in the distribution world, so they said they're going to put out this hip-hop record. And they wanted my opinion. So they played me this hip-hop record. And I'm listening, I'm thinking, this is so bad. Like, really, really bad, terrible. Yeah. And by the time, I was trying to be polite by listening to the whole thing. By the time it finished, they asked me my opinion, and I said, how are you promoting this? What are you selling it as? And they said, as a hip-hop record. I go, don't do that. I said to them straight, don't do that because you're taking the piss. Yeah, because there's a lot of people that have worked hard to get a certain reputation for what we do, and there's some kind of connection to all of our lives in some way. And what you're doing is, as these white industry people, you're coming in and all you're thinking about, and you've had this in the conversation, how much money you're going to make off of this guy that isn't a rapper. He's just rapping the wackest lyrics in the wackest way to the wackest beat that isn't even hip-hop in any way, shape or form.
And that's the thing, man. It's like if we put on a TV and you look at advertisements or go on social media, look at advertisements that are aimed at young people, yeah? Within 5 of those advertisements, 3 of them are going to be using hip-hop culture in some kind of way, right? In this country.
Abusing.
Okay. How does MC Mello get part of that check?
He doesn't.
How's he looked after? How does Overlord X, do you know what I mean? How does Silver Bullet benefit from that in some way? Do you know what I mean? And I'm kind of like, where's Bionic's, do you know what I mean, statue? You know what I mean? Like, and so I think as I've been extremely lucky that connected to hip hop culture, I've managed to have a career. I've managed to make a living. I've never done anything else. And I'm 51 years old, right? So I've been very blessed in life, and I have to be, and this is why I still will always mention it, that I have to be thankful for being allowed to come into someone else's house and eat the food, because people, Bionic should be, I don't know his situation, but like, that's a pioneer. Like, I'm one of the dopest that ever did it in this country. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, but where's, you know, like, I want the Bionic statue and I want the Bionic office building with all, you know what I mean? Like, so I just think it's important that we reference where the culture came from and always make sure that...
I also think as artists, a lot of people do just come into this and all they think about is what benefits them. You know, there's a lot of people that have forgotten that, you know, when we got into this, it was with maximum respect for the culture. Like, and a lot of people just come in and go, I want to rap, and that's it. But they don't understand the backstory. So throughout, you know, guys like me and you know, loads of other guys that we can name as well. We came into this with a mission, with a purpose, and part of that was to be able to pass on the information and the knowledge that we learned to the younger generation and all that. But everything we did was done respectfully, you know? And I think that part of the problem is that a lot of people don't have that respect for this no more, because all they're taught, especially through social media, it's all about how much material stuff you have. You know, who's got the flashiest car, who's got the best girl, who's got the...
We only need to look at the, you know, what's happening with black music in this country now, because, you know, they always let one artist get through. You might have a Kano or a Dizzy or whoever, right? But largely black music never...
Yeah, it was one. It was one in, one out.
But now you've got like black pop music across the board. I'm not using the word pop as a diss. I'm saying it's popular, it's mainstream, it's, you know, in the charts, it's on the radio, blah, blah, blah. And you've got all these artists. But, you know, what's the connection between those artists and the culture that they've come from? And what impact does that have on the culture moving forward? We all got friends that do, you know, terrible things to make a living. So, you know, if they're rapping to make a living, and some of the rap records aren't great, I'm not mad at them, and they're buying the Mama House or whatever, or putting the boys on. That's great, I'm pleased for them. But I think when you come into hip-hop, you have to have understanding it is a culture, you know, it's broad, it didn't start with you, you know, like some of these guys that are in the charts.
But the worst part is that it's not that it didn't even start with them, it's that they don't even want to acknowledge that it started somewhere else. You know, it's sad when you think, and this is no disrespect to So Solid Crew, for example, but we done an interview recently and someone mentioned that, and they mentioned So Solid Crew, so I'm mentioning it for that reason. You know, hip hop did not start with So Solid Crew.
Nah, but you know what? I think So Solid Crew, and I know a few of those guys, like, I think they know where the culture, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
like,
I'm not. It's not them.
100%
It's
those guys. Like,
it's the media that didn't know, that put the word out there, and then suddenly the kids that are listening. It's not anything bad about So Solid
I
at
remember when
all.
N-Dubs blew, and I was happy for them. I'm like, these three kids, and they knew what, they knew where the called, them guys were from round the way or whatever. It's like I'm nothing but pleased for people, but it's like, it's jumped from people like So Solid or N-Dubs that were very aware of the culture, respected it, and blah. But they might be doing something that was more commercially successful, but they understood. Like I see Mega and me and Asher have done work, and like those guys got maximum respect for.
100%.
All the people that came before them. But some of these new guys, I don't know whether it's.
And imagine how many careers, what they did, how many careers actually evolved from that.
Imagine how many careers you and Bionic and Rodney P started.
Yeah, of course.
Because you don't get the So Solids without you guys setting the foundation.
Exactly.
And then after you guys, your Skinny and your Clashes and your Jets, and do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So there's a lineage of the whole thing.
You know what? I want to move on to talking about you at some point moved to the States, right? And again, that was another brave move.
Yeah, it's a little bit stupid. I ran out of money and came home. But so I was back and forth from about, so the first time I went out there was about 95, 96. And then we got the deal with Dave Paul. So we was recording the Birth album, which was my first album. And that had, Shabazz and Dead Prayers and ALX, and then over here, Yogi, Moorish, etc. And so I was back and forth for a couple of years doing that. And then there were just other opportunities, and, I had a girlfriend at the time out there. So I was I go out there, you used to get 3 months on a visa, and then you had to come home. So I basically go out there for 3 months, come back for a couple of months, go back out there, and I was doing bits here, and I was doing bits there. And then at a certain point, my son, my oldest son, he was a bit more settled in, living with his mum most of the time and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, you know what, if I really want to do this thing, I need to be in America. That's where the industry is, we're still, this is kind of before, you probably just landed your chart thing then, but like Skinny hadn't happened, Yogi stuff hadn't really happened. Like it was still super underground here. So I was like, let me move out there. So I sold everything I owned. I remember like all the guys from Five Lamps and all the hip hop guys came around, went through my records. So I held on to about this many records that I just wouldn't let go. And that handful of video cassettes and then I had one bag full of clothes and then another bag with my music equipment, and I moved out there and kind of stayed with my friend Ness from ALX, the rapper that I work with. And then me and him kind of got an apartment together, just try and do the music thing. But I was out, and basically I used to do 3 months, to come home for a few days, renew the visa, see the family, back on a plane. And so my plan was to relocate altogether. But after a year, I'd run out of money. My son had started to get in a little bit of trouble. So, the baby mother was like, you need to come home and be around for him. So I was like, okay, so this ain't. So basically I came back. But prior to that, I'd probably done about 4 or 5 years of back and forth. So I was kind of in the States as much as I was here. Then I moved for a year. That didn't pan out. And then I came back. But around the time I came back, I think literally I came back. Yeah. And then that's when Skinny got his deal. So Skinny got his deal. And then I think went prison. And then came out. And then Lowlife picked up the same thing. And then I remember getting the check. I was like the only person that ever got paid from that. Skinny never seen no money. Because Lowlife did what Lowlife did. I think they did a runner with the money.
So what do you know about that situation?
I mean, I don't know everything, but because basically I was a producer. So basically it wasn't much, but I got paid for the beats I did. And then if they got picked as singles, you got paid again. So I did 3 tracks for the album. They were the 3 singles. So I got paid twice for the tracks. So I got a check, which was the most money I'd ever seen in my life. But Skinny was obviously on royalties. And as the story goes, Lowlife, who used to, was a rapper and ran the label, never paid no one. So Skinny, as far as I know, never got paid from the album.
It was Brain Tax.
Brain Tax.
Brain Tax was the rapper, Lowlife was the label.
The label, correct, yeah. So, and I think he did one out of the country, and no one got paid. So like, Noise produced most of the album, DJ
Okay,
Noise.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah. Basically because a lot of people that I speak to seem to think that Flip produced the album.
So Flip produced tracks on that. Flip produced, I think, Just Cancel the State of Mind. So that was one of the like lead tracks. That's the one they did the video for. That was Flip, and Flip was like a big part of the crew. So Flip was like, he was kind of rolling with Mud Fam. He kind of, I don't know if he officially managed Skinny, but kind of, you know, the shows and stuff, like dealt with a lot of stuff. So, and the building that they had the studio that Low Life Records was in, I think that was something to do with Flip. So Flip was an important part of it. Production-wise, Counts the State of Mind album, DJ Noise did most of the tracks on there. So, and he's dope. Like that, the sound of that album is DJ Noise. Because some people come to me going, "Oh, you produced Counts?" And I'll be like, "Not really. I did the singles." So the singles were mine. Noise did the rest, and then Flip did the
my personal favorites, and it's nothing to do with me knowing you at all. My personal favorites were the tracks you produced.
Yeah,
all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I fucked the hook.
Yeah, so I did. I'll be surprised. No Big Thing and Fuck the Hook, and I think certainly like when they do the live stuff, those tracks, you know, they go down. But I think me like it was just the right time. Like Skinny, like I've been working kind of with my guys, Moorish and Yogi and Shay One and Rukus, so we were doing our thing in the Midlands. Skinny, there was Mud Fam, and then there's Task Force and Jess, and you know what I mean, different people down here, and I think Rodney P and stuff, and I think I really like what them guys were doing. They like what we were doing. Me and Skinny met, and I was like, you know, let's do some stuff. We recorded those tracks, and then I think he got locked up. So with Paul Samuels from Talking Loud, he got the deal, and I think he got locked up, so they dropped him. Then he came out, and then Low Life, they took on the project where we had to re-record the tracks because they own the masters. But I think it was just the right time. Like Skinny was on fire. You know, we had stuff going on with Yogi and, you know, Malik had Cyber Screams and
not just musically on fire, but just a personality.
Yeah, he was. Loved, I mean, Skinny's like, I love Skinny, but Skinny's crazy. Yeah. Like, you know, he was a force.
Character. He was a character.
Between him and Kalashnikov, he still is, man. You can't change Skinny. Yeah. But I think those tracks, it was the right time. You know, I seen him the other day, and I keep on saying we need to jump in and do something. So I think it was just the right time, and I think, you know, like he was real hungry to, you know, kind of make his mark, and I was like wanted to. And the other thing about Skinny is because you know when you work with rappers, there's two things as a rapper. There's your ability as an MC, your cadence, what you're going to talk about, your ability as a lyricist. There's also your ability to pick beats and A&R yourself. So some people are great rappers and they pick, like I might turn up with 10 beats, and usually, I don't always get it right? But usually as a producer, you're going to, if you've had any kind of success or longevity, you're going to have a sense, you make a track and you'll be like, this one's going to be a banger. Sometimes you're wrong. I can tell. Rukus, Let It Go, that track, I got it all the way wrong, right? But when, like, usually you know when you're working with a rapper when they're on point. Because I did those tracks and I had this beat tape and there were other people that I was playing stuff for and they were picking stuff. I'm like, Skinny was like, I want that one, and that one. I'll be surprised, no big thing. They're the tracks I want. I definitely 100% want them. And I'm like, yeah, he knows what he's doing. Because when I did I'll Be Surprised, I was like, this is going to be a massive track. The right person jumps on this is going to go nuts. Do you know what I mean? So, and I think, I'm sure it was like GQ magazine or something like in the last year was like, it was the greatest UK hip hop album ever or something like that. Yeah, and what I'll say is like Flip was instrumental in, I would say, in holding it together. Like he was on point. He was like business minded, you know, probably from a slightly different background from some of the people around. So I think he saw the potential in what was happening with Skinny, and he was an important person for the creative, and he was there throughout the whole thing. Like every session I ever did.
Yeah, when we went on tour, he was there.
Every day. So he was about. But that album, if you're talking from a production point of view, DJ Noise was the main sound of the album. He did more tracks than anyone else on the album.
While you were living in the States, I mean, those connections that you built up, I'm guessing you're still in contact with a lot of those people.
Yeah. So I mean, you know that I have so much, you know, because obviously you go into another country, you know, like. And people look out for you. So I lived in Shabaz's house, Shabazz the Disciple's house, for like, every time I was out there for like years, you know what I mean? Like, know all his family, you know what I mean? Like, so you know, not as much as I probably should, but I'll always touch base, connect. Class, I fell out, lost touch with for many, many years. He kind of came out of music, but we're back in touch now. And then obviously, A&R was a group, so we did 2 albums together. Then they went off and did other bits. I did other bits. But Nessa always stayed in touch with, who's one of the rappers out of A&R. And then in the pandemic, because we kept on touching base periodically. He did this other project called Weekend Money, which is a bit more kind of electronic, but he did really well. It was like a bit of a hipster thing. Then, and at the same time, I had Jamie Joseph, who got signed to RCA, soul singer. So I was like busy with that. So we were kind of doing separate things, and then and Baby People and the other companies and stuff. So we touched base, just like, yo, you good? How's life? And I kept on saying, yo, we need to make some underground hip hop again. And we're like, yeah, we're gonna do it. Like, I'll send you some stuff. Yeah, it never happened. But this is like your mind conversation every time we speak, right? And then the pandemic hit, right? And usually when your friends are overseas, when something big happens like that, you touch base, just go, how's things out there? You good? Like, what's it like in America? So I touched base with him and I was like, and we locked the first lockdown here, right? And I'm in the house. And I was like, this is the time when we're actually meant to do this music, right? And he was like, yeah, we should really do it. And I'm like, bro, right, I'm gonna tell you now, I'm gonna make some beats. I'm gonna send it to him, you do them. And you're gonna write to him. And I said, but listen, if we don't do it now, let's never talk about it again. Because we're literally stuck in the house. There's nothing to do, right? Other than like kids' maths lessons, which I hated. So that night I got my equipment wasn't even set up. I got my equipment out because after Jamie lost his deal, I packed a load of stuff down and it was a bit disheartening and blah, blah, blah. So, and I made my first beat. I sent it to him. He wrote to it in like a day and sent it back. And I was like, this is actually kind of dope. So we did another. And then we ended up creating an album, which we pressed on vinyl and cassette and we put out. And then it was a little while. So we ended up doing a record label, which we're still doing now. Great t-shirt, by the way. The system don't work.
The system don't work. Okay.
So the difference this time really was like, me and Ness talked about it. And I was just like, listen, if we're going to do it this time, let's just do it for us. I'm going to make beats for you. You're going to write raps for me. Like, let's not worry about what's popular, what's going to get on the radio. Like, before it was much more like, how do we do this in a way that we're going to, like, how do we get on top? Like, when I did stuff with A&R, they got on Unsigned Hype in the Source, and, we're in the studio with this guy, and they got beats from DR Period, and they're working with, do you know what I mean? So things were happening. It was all, Skinnyman was happening over here. Yogi was having offers from labels and stuff. Rukus had Let It Go. So there was all these like moments. But this time I was like, okay, we're not that young anymore. Do you know what I mean? But we love the music and it's important. And really the sort of music we want to hear, it's not really being released. Partially with the sonics, the sound, the type, but also the sort of message. Like, even the guys that are doing like quote unquote underground hardcore hip hop, they're rapping about jewelry, and cars and how pretty the girls are. Like, and I like jewelry and cars. Like, I like nice things, right? But I got into hip hop because it was a music of rebellion. Because I was like disinterested in what was going on, what was on offer. And maybe if I was born 10 years earlier, I would have been a punk. But hip hop was the music. Public Enemy were like, fuck the system. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, this resonated with me as a youth. And I'm like, where's the music's gone this song? Have I still got to listen to Dead Prez or Public Enemy or NWA to get that energy? Like, where is that? Even in underground hip hop, like, I'm not hearing it no more. I'm just hearing about how fly you are. Like, cool, but like, I need to hear something else. So we were like, let's do the antidote to that. Let's make music that talks about maybe just how real life is, the struggles that people face, the lack of glamour in some of our day-to-day existences, which is what we see in the real world. Yeah, we're not all driving around.
Do you feel like what you do is different? Because there's a lot of people that come in with your messages.
Yeah.
So say for example, you get someone like Logic or Low-Key.
That's fine. Yeah, 100%.
And your Carlas and whatever. There's messages. Okay, and there's always something to do with the system not working for us and whatever. Mm-hmm. So what is your message? How different is it to what they do?
So to what they do, not massively, because essentially when you're looking at like your Immortal Techniques, your Logics, Low-Keys, Dead Prez, it's all the same family. It's interesting. Logic kind of set up People Army over here. When I first went to the States, there was People Army there. Now the fact that it's not a direct relationship, someone invited, doesn't matter. We're all part of the same camp. We're all going to talk about the problems and start suggesting solutions of other ways things can be, right? The difference probably between what we're doing with the label and say someone like Immortal Technique or Dead Prez is there's a slight different perspective. So I think when you listen to Dead Prez, it's like these guys are like, they're almost like the role models, right? Like, they're your Black Panthers. They're like, this is the society we can create. In some of their music, there's tracks like, where they're getting drunk and stuff, where it's like, they're talking about the problems. Whereas with The System Don't Work, it's more of perspective of like, we're talking from the perspective of someone that might still be caught up in the hustle. Like you might be out there on the block still doing what you're doing, but you're aware that you're a victim in that situation. You're aware that there are other victims from that situation. You're aware that you've been placed there, that it wasn't a choice. Do you understand what I'm saying? And that you're there because the system's designed in a certain way that you're not really going to win. So we might talk about, the mother that can't pay rent, or the young girl that is out doing sex work because there's not another option, or people that are struggling with mental health or drugs or substance misuse or whatever, because that's what we see around us in our lives, as opposed to we're going to build a socialist economy, and do you know what I mean? So it's a little bit more like everyday lowbrow. So there's stories on the records about people that are just really struggling. And then there's some suggestions about, what happens if we all work together? What happens if everyone stops paying the tax? What happens if no one goes to work tomorrow? What happens to the economy and this? Everything stops, right? Because we run everything.
And I think we should all stop paying taxes, by the way.
Let's all stop paying. And bigger than that, let's
stop paying your council taxes.
Let's have a general strike, whether there's a trade union or not. No one go to work for a week.
If we do that, some serious shit's going to change very quickly.
We let these, whether it's governments, corporations, whatever, businesses run our lives because we give them permission to do that because we don't understand. They can take any one of us. I don't care how big and bad you are. I've seen some of the roughest, baddest, sophisticated, organized people get taken out of the game, locked up, killed, whatever, right? So as an individual, even as your little gang, your little crew, there's a limit to your power. But us as the people, collective is limitless. We run everything. We just don't always know. So the label, it was about two things. One is it's like...
Can we actually save that conversation? Because I want to bring Ness in.
Okay. You know what? When I first started making music, it was because I didn't always have the money. Or back in the days, KRS wanted to release an album. Then there won't be another one for a year, right? So I was like, if I can make my music, I can have music all the time. It's a little bit, when we started this label, it was a little bit the same thing of like, I just want another Dead Prez album or another Logic album, like maybe I've got to make my own so it's kind of that. It's like, let's just, and if it's successful, cool. But I think we don't judge it on how many sales it is. We judge it on what impact it can have and what it does for us. Right. Like me as a person, if I'm not creating music, there's something missing in my life.
You know what? I speak to a lot of people, and there's a lot of people that are exactly on that same wavelength that you're talking about. But a lot of these people don't want to ruffle any feathers. Yeah, they don't want to ruffle any feathers, and they just want to stay in their corner and do what they consider to be happy-go-lucky music or just lyricism or whatever, because they're scared of the backlash of what nowadays you could say one word wrong and you get cancelled.
We come from a generation where we were cancelled before we started.
Exactly.
We weren't allowed in the nightclubs. We weren't allowed any. That's where hip hop came from. You was on the block, in the street, setting up your own parties because we couldn't get in anywhere.
But we're gonna talk about the System Don't Work in more depth once we get Ness in. You were doing some work with Yogi. You had a couple of albums with him, and there was one track in particular that I just remember because I don't listen to radio now. But there was a time when I was listening to radio all the time, and Yogi and your track was all over the place.
The Winehouse track.
And I thought that was going to be another switch, another moment in UK hip hop that was going to flip.
And it's crazy because it almost was. And it's like, we got so close. So basically, that track sampled the Specials track, Gangsters, right? And it was basically the riff, and then we did some additional production, blah, 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 and Yogi rapped on it. And we put it out there. It didn't do much at first, but P and Skits had their show on One Extra. Skits loved the track, and he played it every week for about 2 months. And after about 6-7 weeks, Zane Lowe, who had at the time the main kind of evening show on Radio 1, like if Zane Lowe was backing your record, it was...
So that was when he moved from XFM to Radio 1?
Correct.
Okay.
So he heard it, and he was like, obviously kind of people recognized the sample. So they were like, what's this? This is dope. Like, let me get this. So he got it. He started playing it. Then he made it his record of the week. And then Colin and Edith that were on Daytime, they heard Zane Lowe play it. And they started playing it. So all of a sudden we've gone from like next to no plays, just skits supporting it, to it's on like evening Radio 1 every night. And we're getting daytime spins. And we're putting it out ourselves. There's no record label, no nothing. And I remember there was this guy, I think his name was Piers Bradford, who was like kind of head of music for Specialist.
Under George Gattuso.
George Gattuso was the head of music for Radio 1 at the time. And he rang me, and I remember I was in a record shop dropping off some records, sale or return. And he was like, this is a bit of a strange conversation. He goes, because I'm not meant to ring you. Like, that's not how this works, right? What's meant to, people bother me all the time. People are always trying to get my phone to ring me to get meetings with me. But I'm ringing you because we've got your record. And he goes, we actually all love your record. We think it's great. But are you in a position, because if we put this record on the daytime playlist at Radio 1, it's going to go in the charts. If it goes on the A-list, it's going to go top 10, right? That's how this thing works. And we don't want to do that. And then you've got no way of releasing it, distributing it, promoting it, marketing it, because then it makes us look stupid like we're backing the wrong record. So I'm ringing you to find out, have you got those things in place? I lied through my teeth. Yes, we've got all that in place. Distributors, marketing team, because it's hip hop, you know what I mean? So I'm like, 100%, we're using so-and-so, da-da-da-da, blah, blah. We had none of that in place. We're broke. We're from Derby. So then,
but that's an important. What you just said there is such an important lesson to all the artists. Yeah. Like, just before you actually carry on their story, just tell everyone that's watching, anyone who's an artist who's trying to get somewhere, they've got the right track, but yet they don't understand how the business works. Just give them that little bit of insight.
So I mean, the music industry, I mean, it's changed, but you know, it works a certain way, and there are tastemakers and there are gatekeepers, and if you're coming from a hip-hop background, more than likely you're not going to have access to those people. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you're putting your stuff out there and you're thinking, how's it going to get through? But there are people that will sit around in meetings, and even to this day, even though radio isn't a massive thing anymore, Radio 1, they're going to sit down every week and one extra, and they're going to review all the new music, and they're going to decide what stuff goes on a playlist. There's the upfront list, then there's your C list, B list, and A list. If you're on the A list, you might get played 4 or 5 times a day in the daytime. C list, maybe 4 or 5 times a week. Do you know what I mean? But if you get onto those playlists, every other radio station in the country is going to look at that, and you're probably going to go onto their playlist. And all those pre-recorded music things that you hear in a supermarket or in a gym or whatever, they're going to look at what's on the Radio 1 playlist, and they're going to make compilations of that stuff. And the companies that provide the CD. So, do you know what I mean? The power of some of those things is massive. But if you're from that background, you haven't got access to them people. You don't know those people. So what we did is we said, yes, everything's in place. And then we rushed around, and I used that phone call to go, like Radio 1's going to put it on place, will you distribute it for us? So we got a distributor in place and blah, blah, blah. Whereas before they wouldn't even take the call. And then there was a guy called Eden, had a company called Eden Blackman from Ish Media. Ish Media? Yeah. And he was a radio plugger. So a radio plugger, again, if you don't know, is someone that you pay a fee to, and they will take your music and they will play it to these tastemakers for a price, right? Some pluggers will take anything, but a good plugger like Eden, they're only going to take a record that they really believe is going to go somewhere. And if you're someone that will take anything, the radio stations know that, and they won't do as many meetings with you or take you as seriously. Whereas when Eden or someone like that's walking it in the door, they're going to take him seriously because he tends to represent stuff that goes the distance, right? Now, he had a bit of an easy job with us because it was already going to go on the playlist, right? It was already on daytime. So he contacted us and was like, I've heard your record, it's dope, I want to work with you. It costs this much. I'm like, I've got no money. And he's like, okay, I'm going to do it for this much, and then if it goes on, then we'll work out, blah, blah, blah.
But you know why he took your job on?
Why?
It's because he robbed me of some money.
Oh, really? Welcome to the music industry.
No, that's a whole different story. I understand where he's coming from, but he was wrong.
Eden drove an Aston Martin and I was in a Fiesta. That's what, that's where we was at.
Oh, well, now I know where my money went.
Yeah. So he took that on and worked it. But then here's the crazy thing. There was EMI Records interested and Gut Records both interested in signing that track as a single, yeah? And we went and had the meetings, and they were like, is the sample cleared? And I was like, nope. Because we didn't clear any samples. Because it costs money, right? So they were like, we're going to need to get the sample cleared. So I went, found who held the publishing, and went to them, and I was like, can we clear the publishing for this song? You know, it's doing really Radio 1. It's a whole new audience for the specials of younger kids that are into hip-hop that might not know the specials. It's good for you. It's good for us. you know, what's that deal look like? And they were like, you're not putting it out. And I was like, yeah, no, but listen, you're not putting it out. I'm like, what are you talking about? Now, the thing is, if you know your music, yeah, or anyone that's listening to this is interested, Google Prince Buster Gangsters, right? And there's a reggae riff on there with a bass line. And that exact same riff ended up being the Specials, Gangsters. So they lifted his whole melody and made it their track. Then what we did is we sampled their version and made it our track. But the guy that owned the publishing for the Specials one is going, nah, you can't use it. So you've got like, in my mind, right, at that age, you got like a broke guy from Jamaica, from the, you know, ghetto or wherever, who's made this piece of music. Okay, they're not rich, but you got, you know, some white and black kids from Coventry that have taken that thing, made their version of it, and then you got a broke black kid from Derby who wants to sample theirs, and the publishers going, no, this is the property of.
And that's what's
these
wrong with
people.
the industry.
What's crazy is Jerry Demos, I know him now, like we're cool, like I met him way later through Love Music, Hate Racism and stuff.
But he wasn't the problem though, it was the publisher.
It was the publisher. Publisher's like, Jerry doesn't license his stuff. So we tried to go backstreet, obviously we got COV, Preacher, Luch, them guys in Coventry, that's our family. So we were like, yo, find someone connected to the Specials in Coventry. So they went and found someone's niece and they spoke to Neville Staples and he was like, I'm cool with it, but Jerry wrote the song. Jerry doesn't talk to the rest of the Specials. That's why if you go and watch the Specials, it's which Specials, because there's different lineups. Do you know what I mean? So Jerry, they were like, he owns the publishing, so there's nothing we can do. I couldn't get in touch with Jerry as such. So then what we did is we went and changed it. I brought in a musician, replayed it all, changed the melody line, got someone in to re-sing the hook in a different melody and everything, changed the words. Took it back to Radio 1 and said, this is the rework. Will you still back it? And Radio 1 like, yeah, it's not we don't like it as much, but yeah, we'll back it. We'll still put it on the playlist. Went back to the record labels. Do you like this version? Yeah, that's cool. We're good to go. We want to do it. The check wasn't massive, but what I would say is this. It was enough to change Yogi's life. It was enough to, whatever he was having to do in life, he didn't have to do no more. He could just do music, right? And that, who knows what, you know, the rest of the album was great. So who knows what could have happened from there for him, right? So we've got everything set up. So I went back to the publisher and I'm like, we've got this new version. We've changed the melody. We've changed all the words. None of the original recording is there. There's no samples in it. Can we use it? And he was like, no. If you put it out, we're going to do a cease and desist. We're going to contact Radio 1. We're going to sue you. And it's never going to see the light of day. So the labels said, we can't do it then. And we had to say to Radio 1, can you take it off the air? And Yogi's career, I mean, he's still, you know, he made some noise as an artist, but he had a real opportunity to, you know, he would have got.
Bro, I remember the buzz.
And it's just after that like Skinny got his deal. That went daytime Radio 1. So, and none of those things none of them samples were cleared. Lowlife never cleared. So it was the same thing, but yeah. But that's the music industry, you know, like it ain't designed for us. And obviously sampling.
Another life ruined.
Yeah. Well, not ruined, but you know what I mean? Just, there was a huge opportunity that he had. And Yogi's a super gifted artist. So it would have been beautiful for him to still be in the studio recording, releasing albums. And that probably would have been the moment that changed that.
But did he actually care about being an artist after that point?
I think it definitely had a hit because those guys did the Entourage album, which was him, Rukus, and Shade One. Yeah, it was dope. But I think after that, it kind of fizzled a little bit. And to some extent, Yogi probably watched Skinny because Skinny was the one that went daytime Radio 1. So I think which way?
How many UK acts have actually done that?
Yeah, I think it was you, Skinny. And you got your Dizzes and your Kanos and that, but that's slightly
that's
different music.
we're talking underground.
Well, hip-hop, underground hip-hop, you, Skinny. I don't know whether Witness Fitness went daytime.
I think that would have done.
Yeah, so probably that. And I think that's it.
I think it charted at number 49.
The funny thing with Skinny's as well is Skinny's would have gone in, I think, something like top 20. But Lowlife didn't sort out like the barcodes or something on the release.
That's crazy.
So none of it was counted. So he would have been like a top 20 artist, but Lowlife didn't, because he didn't know what he was doing. You know, we was all working it out. So he was putting it out there, no IRC codes or barcodes or whatever. So it never got registered. So he was like 50 whatever in the charts with the album, where the album would have been.
And yesterday I just put up a post saying it was the 25-year anniversary of us being on top of the pops.
And the moments are important. They're important for the culture, but they're important, you know, for your Central Seas and your, you know, like these kids that are running around you miss, and you know, like that stuff didn't get to happen if you guys didn't do what you did. You know what I mean? And there was a lot of like hanging around outside of Radio 1 at 11 o'clock at night to try and wait for a DJ to come out to give him a CD.
We did that. We all did it.
All the time.
All of us had to do
the graph
that.
that went in, there was no, I'm going to carry on like a star.
You know, we used to find out, you know, what record shop is John Peel going to be at? Let me be there. You know, at this time, I know he's going to be there. Someone's told me, blah, blah. So that was our research. That was our homework. But you mentioned another name. You mentioned Rukus.
Yeah.
We obviously know Shade One as well, part of Entourage as well.
Super dope.
Right, dope album. I'd done the CDs for that, I believe, as well. So at the time, but Rukus, I mean, you know, one of the best guys you could meet as well.
Yeah, man, Rukus is,
you know, and he's been with you all along,
yeah,
including with Baby People.
Yeah, so Rukus is Handsworth originally, came to Derby, and we did we made music together. It's funny actually because we did 2 tracks initially, What She Said and Let It Go, and Rukus is like, I think Let It Go is the better track, and I'm like, no, trust me, it's What She Said.
Yeah, you got it wrong many times.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for me, my album would have been a total waste. But
no, listen, I get it right more than I get it wrong, but when I get it wrong, I hold my hands up. Rukus, that one 100%, he knows I know I was wrong. Because I was like, What She Said, and then we put them both out, and then the A and B side, and then Rukus was like, yo, Jay, everyone's talking about Let It Go, which was the B side. Yeah. And then I remember when Clash came up to Derby to do a gig, and he's like, I was like, yo, we need to work on some bits. And he was like, I really want to work on that track. Would you do with the dread, the Ras, Rukus? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, but not the slow one, the other one, with the Let It Go one. I was like, okay. So then Rukus hollered Ty because he had a relationship with him. And then we got Yogi on it because that was our boy. And we did the remix, and the remix went, that was like A-list on Galaxy, A-list on One Extra, A-list on Kiss.
What year was that?
I'm going to say like 2005, around then.
So it was just before. Like, we'd already started talking, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Before Guerilla Tactics, yeah.
But I'm going to have to tell the story about the CD, but we'll come to that.
Yeah.
Because we'd met, and then I started like watching you closely, seeing what was going on, and obviously I see Rukus making some noise with that remix as well. You know, so how well did that do?
That was crazy. That, I mean, that did a lot of work. We got a lot of gigs off it, a lot of other work off it. I remember Twin, Alex, Alec, Twin. He was interested. No, Alex actually, not Alec, was interested in signing it. He came up for a meeting. He had a moment, like it was just like that. That mini moment in time, that was probably the biggest, you know, certainly the biggest hip hop track out there. And then obviously me and Rukus, we just, you know, we clicked as people. So, you know, we set up a company together, Baby People, which is still running to this day.
Was it just you two?
Yeah, initially it was just the 2 of us. We had another partner that came in later. He's now retired because we're all old. But it was me and Rukus initially. And it was, you know what? It was me and Rukus. It was really Rukus. So basically, when I moved to the States for that year, I came back. And I remember going to see Rooks, and I'm like, I'm broke, I need to make some money. And he's like, well, I know this guy that works with kids that are kicked out of school. And I used to have this laptop that I used to travel with because I had to, you know, them times most people didn't have laptops. And he was like, let's write a little course for the kids, and I'll go and see the guy. So it was actually his idea. And we went and did this thing, and it went really well. So then they gave us some more kids and the company, and then we brought on Alex Blood, who was working with us. He started doing some teaching the kids, and we brought on a graffiti writer, and Angelo and Mr. Toe were DJs. So we just started bringing in our friends as the company grew, and it's growing and growing and growing. It's been running 25 years this year.
And that was all from you and Rukus.
Yeah, Rukus' idea originally, so we set that up, and
big up Rukus, Sam. So.
Yeah, that's the brilliant.
No, it was good to, like, obviously we came to Derby to do one of our road shows. So it was good to link up with you.
And he's still active, man. Like, anyone knows Rukus, like, there's so many people in Derby and beyond that Rukus has been there to help them start their career, you know, support their career.
If there was anyone that was going to be able to guide the kids into a right direction along with you, he would have been that right guy, and he is the right guy. You know what I mean? I see the way he was with the kids there, and everyone respects him, loves him.
Like I say, there's the kids, and then just artists in the city. Like, he's such a humble and giving person, way more than me. Do you know what I mean? The amount of kids that have been through that, and not, you know, some kids come and it's cool, but like there's some every year where it has a real impact. And like now there's like, I think there's like 40 staff. We work with about 2,000 kids
That's
a year.
crazy.
We have like 150 kids on roll, which means they'll come every week or a few times a week to do their sessions with us. So we've grown from this little thing of just me and him doing.
What year did it start?
2001.
So I was in 2007. I was doing the CDs and everything, and I started doing some CDs for you because you had, you know, I was hearing all these kids rapping and.
At the time we started it up, there was a few things because we had a video company, Baby Knotted Films,
which we've done a video with James and everything.
Exactly. So we do a lot of videos for Channel U and MTV Base and stuff. And then me and Thad, rest in peace.
Big promo.
We set up big promo together.
Yeah, rest in peace,
radio
Thad.
promo, which he ran with. So there was like, you learn in hip hop in the UK. I can't just be like, I'm going to be a producer. You had to be a producer, but then I did a bit of management, and then. You know, we set up a recording studio, and then we had baby people doing the education stuff, and then we did the video thing. So you tried all these different things, and between all of it, you had enough that it made a...
Can we just spend a couple of minutes just to... I don't want to use the word flowers, but yeah, just talk about that.
Yeah, man.
Rest in peace, Thad.
So Thad, for people that don't know Thad, because if you weren't in the industry or from London, you might not know him, but Thad Boogie was my manager for about 10 years. And I actually met Thad from being in the States. So when you want your publishing taken care of, in the UK, you either go to a publishing company, you get signed up by PRS here, or in the States, it's ASCAP. And because I was mainly working in the States, I signed up with ASCAP. And I met with the international department, and they were like, you need to meet this guy in the UK, Thad Barron, he's crazy. And I had a manager at the time, Iris Dillon, in the States, and I came back, and you know it was cool. I love Iris, but we was probably, you know, she was trying to get me tracks on Usher and I was like, yeah, I want to do something with Dead Prez, and she was like, no one cares about them, you know. So we was kind of in different directions. I came back and I met Thad, and he was like, Jay Dilla, Kanye, you know what I mean, SAS, like, and I was like, we're talking the same language. But Thad, from the day I met him, this guy has got so much energy. He's like, I don't know whether he ever slept. He was just constantly full of life, full of energy. I've known Thad 20 years. I've never seen him get cross. I've never seen him lose his temper or even look annoyed. Do you know what I mean? And I gave him plenty of reasons over the years. He was always around. He was always blagging something. He was always trying to hustle something for you. Do you know what I mean? And he had that same energy from the day I met him until the day he passed. You know, he played on Itch FM. Do you know what I mean? Like, loved the culture, always, so many artists he supported, he would always, and it's funny, like his funeral was the other day, and there's a lot of people from the music industry there and stuff as well, but I looked around the room and I thought, there's no one in this room that didn't meet someone through Thad. Because some people, you meet them and they might be in a certain position, but they're going to hold everything for their chest. Not necessarily in a bad way, but they're just like, I'm doing me and maybe my crew. And other people are going to be like, I'm going to share the knowledge with you, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to break bread, I'm going to tell you what you might need to know next if I can help. Thad was that guy. He would take time for anyone and be like, let me introduce you to this person. Let me introduce you. You know, like Thad rang me about a month before he passed and was like, yo, Jay, I got, there's a promoter that's opening a club in France and they want you to DJ. He wasn't my manager anymore. He didn't need to do that. Thad was a blagger in one respect. Like, he literally, we'd have meetings at labels and he'd be in there like, give us a job and da-da-da-da and blah, blah, blah. And do you want to sign this? Give us a check. That, you know, it was that kind of energy. But in the same breath, like, he was like, you know, like I'd be out to the States and he'd be like, yo, I've got a meeting with my boy Lenny Santiago at Def Jam. And if, you know, like Lenny Santiago was a big part of Rockefeller and Def Jam. Like, he's not like the post room guy. You know what I mean? Like, Thad knew people because he had that energy. You know, like Jay Dilla, Thad was working way before Jay Dilla was like, everyone's crazy about Jay Dilla. Like, I believe he's got unreleased Jay Dilla music. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And, you know, like Kanye, he got him on, what was that? There was a single, I think it was Nathan, that he signed when he was at Edel Records. He got like a Kanye remix for it, you know, like he got like Freeway on, you know, UK music before anyone was doing this. Do you know what I mean? So he was tireless, man. And like, you know, like he just, if Thad was in your corner, do you know what I mean? He was going to work, you know, tirelessly for it. And it's a real loss, like, you know, you know, if a rapper or a producer or a DJ or someone that's a public figure passes, you know, the culture tends to recognize that and, you know, makes, you know, when Ty passed, you know, it was a sad thing for hip hop and, you know, and there's mural that's gone up. With someone like Thad, it's like unless you were in the industry, you didn't really know him. But what that guy did for hip hop culture in this country is massive. Do you know what I mean? For black music culture in this country was massive. You know, the amount of events, you know, from the stuff at the Roundhouse, Camden Crawl, you know, all these different things he was involved with. Like, do you know what I mean? So it's like, we do have to give him his flowers. We do have to remember him because there's so many careers that happened and were elongated because of Dad's work ethic and beliefs and his passion for the culture.
You and him were really tight.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew him, but it's one of those where if I see him, yo, Thad, how you doing and whatever. But, you know, every now and then we'd have a conversation because he'd call up to get CDs done and then the conversation would go on for an hour, 2 hours.
Yeah. Thad was that dude, man. He was, you know, like there was a lot, and he was a character, you know, like he'd always have some crazy hat on, like he'd have the old school B-boy deerstalker with a safety pin for an earring and some baggy you know what I mean? Like he moved like he was a rapper more than most rappers did.
But you know, Thad wasn't just your manager. He was also your business partner with Big Promo.
Yeah.
You know, that was a promotions company. And that's basically who I was doing a lot of the CDs for and where I got to talk to him on a regular basis and get to know him so much better. And that's where I was getting all the stories about him discovering Kanye West and everybody else. Now, I don't know how much truth there is to all of that, but, you know...
No, there's always something in there, right? Bro?
Yeah, there's always something. But, you know, he could come and tell me that, you know, he's the reason McDonald's exists, and I'll believe him.
There's no one in the black music industry in the UK that doesn't know who that is.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're in the industry side of it, you know who that is. You've done... Do you know what I mean? You've got a story, you know. Even at the funeral, you know, Shorty Blitz is there and Big Ted and Trevor Nelson and... various A&Rs and people from the industry, do you know what I mean? Because he was a presence, you know, like, and he stayed active, like, you know, like he's had gigs at Universal Music Publishing and he did records, but also he was HFM and he ran events and he managed artists. And
I was at the Conway gig in London and I was trying to message Shorty because he was on stage, Shorty Blitz, just to let him know I'm here. I was like, yo, I'm here, whatever. But he wasn't seeing his phone. But he's on the stage. So I've gone over to, like, you know, to the front to kind of get in there. And when I'm trying to get in there, I've kind of tapped one of the guys and go, bro, do you mind that I just squeeze in for a second just to wave my friend down? Let him know I'm here. And he's like, yo, what are you touching me for? And he started getting argumentative. And I'm like, bro, all I did was, you know what I mean? It's not like I'm breathing all over you. And then his friend turned around, and these are young guys. His friend turned around and he started getting militant with me because the other guy is kind of whatever. Anyway, so there's me doing this, right? And I'm trying to get Shorty's attention and they're coming at me with all this aggression. And I'm like, oh, is this what Conway's fans do? Do you know what I mean? And I thought, you know what, leave it. And then I see them backing off a little bit. I'm like, okay, what's happened? So I'm looking back and there's AJ, there's Thad, there's a whole bunch of people behind me. Everything I played.
you know what's crazy about that night is, so we, on the I think project we did with Ness on The System Don't Work, we managed to get Conway on as a feature for one of the tracks, right? And the manager, let me just say, was being a bit aloof, like in delivering. Do you know what I mean?
But this is at Camden?
Well, generally, I couldn't get hold of him.
Okay.
So I spoke to Thad, and I'm like, because Thad was like, I'm going to the Conway thing, and I'm like, do me a favor. If you see this dude, this is his name, just reason with him for me, because the guy ain't answering my calls. I need to get the files over because we got the album, deadline, and got to press it up and all this. Next thing you know, like later on that evening, I'm getting a selfie with Thad with his arm around the dude, got his number, best friends. Like, don't worry, Jay, I got it. He's going to get everything to you. Like, that was Thad. Like, Thad was going to talk his way into a situation. If I'd been there, I would have dealt with it wrong. I would have ended up, maybe I would have got the files, but we would never would have spoken again. Like, I'm going to go in there like, yo, you know what I mean? But Thad was just, he was like best friends and, probably got some backstage passes. And firstly, how did you even get in there and get backstage and get to talk to him?
But yeah, such a sad loss, and yeah, big up Thad, and rest in peace.
No doubt.
You've worked with a lot of people. I've got a list of some of them here. So we got Larissa, Shade One with Entourage, obviously Rukus, Yogi, MSI and Asylum, Maurice Delta. You've done solo projects, I believe, also with Malik and Cypher Jules, Ant Militia. You've worked with Ness, ALX. There's a lot. I mean, I'm sure you can add a million different things to it. Did you not also do a remix for Amy Winehouse or something at one point?
Did that again? It's kind of Thad that hustled that one into existence. But so Harvey from Zonk, you know, he did the promo for Skinnyman's 12s, and they'd done this Amy Winehouse track, and they basically kind of needed some remixes, right? So they'd gone out to different producers, and the way it works with the major is, if it's a big artist, what they'll do is they'll go, okay, we've got Amy Winehouse's track coming, let's get a drum and bass done, let's get a reggae mix done, let's get an indie, you know, let's just get different versions so that it's playing on as many radio stations as possible week of release. So your job is, and usually it goes to the same London producers, right? So your job is, you get a check, you do your remix, you hand it in, the label presses up the original version and they press up a remix CD, which the plugger then hands out. And they'd gone to Harvey and said, Harvey, we need a hip hop mix, but we want someone cheap and quick. And he goes, Baby J, right? So Harvey hit me up and he's like, yo, Jay, I got this thing. And I'm like, 100%. And I'm like, wow, this could be a moment. Do you know
I thought that was going to be a moment.
Yeah, and the thing is, it was like, you got to remember at the time, Amy had done Frank. She'd done her album, and then this is on Ronson's album version, right? So we were like, we need to, and there was this thing like, people that love black music loved Amy Winehouse, and Amy Winehouse was doing black music, but she wasn't doing anything that was like now black music. So I was like, if I can get Amy Winehouse on a track with like rappers on a reggae thing or a hip hop thing or something like this, I'm going to smash it. So I got the files over and I was like, I could hear I was like, I need to put it like a reggae bounce. They sent all the original stems. I chopped it all up. I made this reggae thing. And then I said to the label, I was like, so do you want something with rappers on or just, and they were like, no, we don't want no rappers on it. We just want, so I was like, okay, let me give you both and you can choose. And they were like, okay, if you want to do it, but we don't. So I rang up I was like, who's super dope and going to come through? And I rang up, to be fair, there was one guy that I rang and I said, do you want to do it? And I was like, because to all of them, my base said, come through and do it. I need to do it tonight and there's no money in it. We might make money later, but right now there's no money in it because they don't want you lot. So I ain't splitting my fee with you, right? And because I ain't getting paid for the version with the rappers on. The first three that I rang were like, we're there, we're on the way, right? And I knew they would be. Then there was one MC that I rang and he was like, oh, I don't know, like, I'm saying it's entirely up to you. And he's like, I don't know, because it's no money and I think it's going to burn me later. Like, I think it's going to bother me. Now I'm going to leave it. That guy regrets this. Like, he saw me later and he was like, I so wish I'd done that. And then so we ended up with Malik, Preacher, Rukus, and Alex Blood. They all came to the studio. Everyone wrote their bits. They murdered it. And I handed in both versions to the label. And the label's like, okay, thanks, that's it, job done, right? And then they were like, I was like, I know you're going to do your promo, but would it be, and me and Thad are scheming now, right? And I was like, would it be okay if we sent some stuff out just to a couple of DJs, like underground hip hop DJs, the version with the MCs? Because them guys, they're probably not going to play Amy's version, but they like these MCs. And they were like, yeah, I get, if it's, it's a couple of, that's fine. So Thad was like, okay. We went and pressed up like that. I think you probably pressed them up. You pressed them up.
Yeah.
Thousands of these CDs, right? And basically what we did is it said Amy Winehouse, big letters, Baby J, big letters, Mark Ronson, small letters, and then put the Sony Valerie. And then on the back it put the Sony logo, like it was their release. And we flooded the market with them. We gave them to every DJ. We was mailing them out, but Thad was literally like a week running around London. Yeah. All of a sudden, so their version comes out, which is like a white cover with 7 different remixes on, yeah? So that just gets forgotten about. All of a sudden, ours is the one on the playlists. So we got on the A-list of 1 Extra, on Kiss, on Choice. Do you know what I mean? Radio 1's playing both versions, so like Rascal, Trevor Nelson, they're playing ours. Daytime's playing Ronson's version. So every other station's playing ours. And it was Carnival weekend, and our version got rinsed at Carnival, not in Gilroy. So... And then the label at first, they rang up and they're like, how the hell? And we were like, I don't know. We just gave it to a couple of people. These things get out. They were like, and at first they were mad. And then they were like, okay, this is actually doing really well. Then Ronson picks up the phone. He's like, yo, thank you. Your mix is, it's doing really well. It's really helping the song, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, the label's like, oh, we're doing a video, for Ronson's video. You should come through. I was like, how would you feel about us doing a video, right? But like, and they were like, no, we don't need you to do a video. And I was like, yeah, but you know, we could do one just for a couple of underground stations.
And you had
right?
James.
And we had the video company where James not, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, can we do a video? And they were like, yeah. They didn't say yeah. They kind of said, if it's just for a couple of things. They were like, we're not really sure because Mark's got his video. That's going to be the video. And I was like, look, let me do it and we'll send it to you. And if you don't like it, we won't use it. And they were like, she was like, okay, this woman, I don't want to mention her name because she probably still hates me. So we basically did this video. I emailed it to her and I was like, can you let me know if we can't use this? And she didn't reply because I'm not important, right? So we rinsed that video. So we did this. Then Sony's like, now they're mad. They're like, how did this fit up? We don't know how it got out. It's crazy, blah, blah, blah. Then Island are like, what is this version of this track that we've never approved? Because Amy was an Islands artist. We're going to do a cease and desist. We want it pulled. So Thab went in there, obviously Darkest Bees. He's the man, he signed Amy. He's like the president of the label or whatever. He knew Thad. So Thad was like, Darkest, he's my boy, Baby J, it's cool. Darkest knew my stuff a little bit. So he was like, it's right, let's calm down. This is actually really good for Amy. Because Valerie was her biggest single at that point ever.
Yeah, of course.
And our version at the time was getting much more play than Mark's was. So we went through, had a meeting with Darkest, and Darkest was like, I'm going to take a punt on you. I want you to go out to Barbados and work with her. You know, we'll maybe do some more music with her. But obviously, you know, that's when her problems were, you know, things were unwinding for us. And that never happened. And then Mark came over to do his show. And we were like, they were like, oh, you should go and see Mark. And I was like, oh, where's his first show? Manchester. Was like, great. So we went up there. After the show, I met him and I was like, yo, thanks so much for the opportunity. He was like, nah, thanks for everything. You know, the mix is done. I was like, yo, it'd be great to get the guys on one of the shows. And I was like, where are you next? He was like, Birmingham. I was like, that's crazy. That's the guy's hometown. Lie. That's only two of them. I was like, that's where they're all from. Like, it'd be nuts if they performed there. The people would love it. He was like, yeah, cool. Let's sort it out. So I went to the tour manager. He was like this old dude, hated us. He was like the Stones tour manager and stuff back in the days. And I was like, oh, Mark says he wants to do the show. We went through, rehearsed it with the band. So they played their version and halfway through, they switched it up. So we got like Baby J t-shirts with everyone's names printed up. Halfway through the set, so you got the same band on and the same acts on for the whole show pretty much. And when that track comes on, which is like the biggest track, halfway through they go, remix, we all run out like, do you know what I mean? Making loads of it. So the crowd just goes crazy, not because they know us, just because it's a big thing. So like it went down really, really well. So after the show, I was like to Mark, I was like, oh, that went really, really well. I was like, we should do some more shows. And he was like, yeah, that'd be great. So I went to the tour manager. I was like, Mark says he wants us on the rest of the tour. So we were just blagging this is hip hop. Like if you're a younger artist, you got to hustle and this is that. So we hustling everything. So we did like the whole Ronson tour. We did Wireless Festival. Do you know, we didn't get paid a penny. The band, we're turning up in my car. You know, we're in, you know, decent car by that stage. So, and the band are like, who are these guys turning up? The tour manager hating us. I remember we did Shepherd's Bush. We turned up to the gig. We knocked at the door. He just opened the door and looked at us and was like, there's no room in here. You guys are going to have to wait outside and shut the door. And I'm having to calm down Preacher and Malika are ready to go and tear this guy to pieces. I'm like, no, chill. This is an opportunity. Let's calm down. Yeah. And then when Jay-Z came over and tour, he asked Ronson to be his support because he knew Ronson. And Ronson was like, it's going to be a hip-hop show. So we did the Jay-Z tour. It was us with Ronson and Wiley did Wearing My Rolex. So we all did the Jay-Z tour and stuff. So it's like this one thing where I just got a check, hand in the mix. No, it was like me and Thad hustled it into this whole other thing. And the amount of work that we got from other remixes and other stuff from that. So that's it's like that was a hustler, but you gotta hustle every opportunity to make it.
Of course. Else, yeah. And talking of your hustle, right? So I properly met you and we got introduced properly at UK Takeover.
Yeah.
I think it was 2004.
Dougie and Mr. Jam.
100% big up Dougie and Mr. Jam. That's Joe Buddha and Mr. Jam. And you were sitting there with Skinny Man as I was walking past. I think Skinny called me over. It's like, yo, there's Blade, whatever. So I've come over. He's introduced me.
And I was a fan. Let's get this straight. Like, to me, like when I meet like Skinny or Clash or whatever, they're my peers. Like, you're doing bits, we're doing bits. I respect you. But I grew up listening to your 12s like, yo, this is lyrical, man. Lyrical, you know. So like to me, you, London Posse, those guys, MC Mello I've never met. Those guys, you guys are heroes to me. I used to sit and study your music. Do you understand what I'm saying? So like, it was a big moment for me. You know what I mean?
No, I appreciate that. And I'm
now,
sure so does
different
Mel.
now.
Yeah, of course, we're all
I got no
wankers
time
and
for it.
whatever in it.
Nah.
Yeah. So what it was is we got introduced, and one of the first things, obviously, we talked for a few minutes, because it was noisy. You were sitting down in the little seating area and whatever, and then you handed me a CD.
This
It
is
was
a
a
CD you
CD.
threw away, right?
It was a CD in a plastic wallet, and in this same room that we're in now was my recording studio.
Okay.
Right? And how I had, you know, you got your skirting board on the in any house or whatever. So it's normally flat against the wall. Yeah, it's a piece of wood that's just flat against the wall. However, when I built the studio, what I did was I built it so that there was a gap like that wide. Yeah. And it was about 6 inches high, 6 or 7 inches high. And inside of that, all around the room, was cables going through. So you had looms, cables, and all that. And you had to, every time a cable went wrong and I had to change it, I had to unscrew it and remove the cable. Now, you've given me the CD. I've come back, I've put it on my desk, and I never saw the CD again. So I'm like, I didn't think anything of it.
And I can't lie, I was a little bit like, obviously things were going okay for me as a producer at that point. I was like, I gave Blade my CD, like, hopefully he's going to pick some joints that I've never heard from you.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, he didn't like my stuff. What's going on? This is
Well,
Blade.
that's the thing, because I think probably over a year went past. Yeah. And one of the cables was damaged. So I had to open the thing. And basically, if you got the wall here, and there's the top of the skirting board that we've built. So it's just like a L shape that joins to the wall. And behind, there's a little gap. The CD had fallen from the desk.
You threw away my CD.
slid down that wall and went straight into the thing. Yeah. And I never saw that CD again until I opened that.
Okay.
Right? So when I went to change the cable, is when I'm like, what the hell is this? So I picked it up, it says Baby J, and I'm like, oh my God, I never got back to him.
So you could have, I'll be surprised, but you slept.
No, it was after that. So I put the CD on, and I'm hearing this beat, 4 walls, and I'm like, oh my God. I've been sat here with I hope he's not giving it to anyone. It's only been a year and plus something. Yeah. So I called you straight away. I'm like, yo, Jay, it's Blade. You know what I mean? And I'm like, please tell me that track's still available. And I remember you saying to me, you offered it to Estelle, and she rejected it.
Yeah, I think Estelle did. I think she took it and then wasn't using it.
And that's basically how our connection happened, because we did that. And I remember I came to your house, stayed over, we recorded it. You had like a little cupboard or something that I went into. You know what I mean? To do the vocals, But it was dope. It was a good vibe. And then we recorded it, and I finished, jumped on the train to get back home and everything. And the next day you called me up and you went, do you want to do an album? And that's basically how Guerilla Tactics with you came about.
And that's one of my favorite albums I've done. Like, I think, again, for me, it was an honor because you have been such a part of my hip hop education coming up. But also, I think that it felt, it was I didn't do lots of albums then that were like, unless it was my albums where I did the whole album. So the fact that it was just you and me working and getting in that zone, it wasn't like we had features on it, but it wasn't like you and me were like, what sort of sounds we need, what kind of stuff, you know what I mean? Like, that space I think is really important when you're working on a project. And I think it was just like, it was well-rounded. It felt like the culmination of something. And I know the response we got at the time from like Hip Hop Connection and some of them, you know what I mean, was dope and stuff.
That experience, when something like that happens and you lose a CD and you find it so much months later or a year and a half later or whatever, and then you make that call and it's still available, that's like, this is meant to happen. Like, you know what I mean? Because there was no reason for me other than to change that cable that I would have found that CD. So yeah, no, big up for that, man. That was.
We need to get the next one done.
Yeah,
I'll give you another CD you can throw away.
And while we were there, while you were sleeping, I couldn't sleep one of those nights I was there, and I ended up watching Passion of the Christ, one of the best films, because you had the DVD at the time.
Okay.
So yeah, I watched that, the DVD or VHS or whatever. But yeah, Passion of the Christ. Yeah. What an amazing film. Yeah. So that's where I discovered that, because everything else you had was complete shit.
That's definitely not true. My film taste is impeccable.
Yeah, whatever you say. And talking of like some of the people that you've worked with, one person I didn't mention on purpose was Farma G.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you recorded one of my personal favorites of Farma G ever. Probably my personal favorite.
I don't know about now, but Farmer said to me at the time, he was like, "This is one of my favorite tracks I've done. It's one of my favorite tracks." But me and him, it's crazy because we've never done one track together. So yeah, Farmer G, I've always thought he was ill, and out of his crew, he's like one of my favorites. So I did this album called Baby Food, which basically I didn't use any samples on. I wanted to try and challenge myself to do something without samples. And that track basically was like a real kind of mellow thing. And Farmer did this track called Love and Peace. And when he did it, I was like, I could hear kids singing in the chorus. So this girl that used to work for me, Emily, you met Emily?
Yeah, I know Emily, yeah.
You know, Emily I ain't seen in years, but
yeah.
She was great.
Yeah.
I said, try and find me a school where you can get in to record this chorus for me. Because she kind of works as an assistant.
She was good at things like that.
Yeah, she was great. And she found this school that ended up being my old junior school.
Oh.
Which I didn't tell her to go to, but that's where she ended up. So she recorded my old junior school, singing the hook, which is on Love and Peace, Farma G. So yeah, that was like a special track.
When I heard that track, I didn't know that you produced it. I just heard Farma, and I was like, wow, how come I've not heard this like when it was out? Then I heard it a couple of years later. Actually, it wasn't even a couple of years. It was only a couple of months. Because was it John Peel that played it?
We did a Maida Vale session.
Okay.
It wasn't for John Peel. That one was for Hugh Stevens. We did one for Rasquame.
Right, that's where I heard it.
Yeah, Hugh Stevens did a Maida Vale, and that was one. So we got like it was crazy actually because it was no samples. When we did the Maida Vale, it was like a full band. We had a string section, and do you know what I mean? I remember So it was dope because it was actually very similar. Whereas sometimes when you have a hip hop track and it's got that energy, the sample and the hip hop drums, and you give it to a live band, sometimes it sounds better.
It gets ruined, yeah.
But sometimes it don't. It's like I always want to hear the original, you know. Like whereas with that, it was like the same exact. It brought a new energy to it, you know what I mean, in a good way because it was a live played stuff in the first place. Sort of thing,
No, it was amazing, man. Because like when I heard it straight away, I think I messaged either you or Farma, I forget who it was, and I said, look, I watch a lot of movies, and I can see visions of certain clips of movies and whatever going into this, and can I make a video for it and put it on my channel? You were like, yeah. So that's what I ended up doing. So the video's on the channel, and that is probably my favorite Farma G track ever.
Yeah. So but the new Farma album is
sick. Yeah, it's sick, man.
Like I actually hit him up because I'm like, and I don't really do this very often, but I was like, yo, salute, because that album is like the beats, and obviously he's a producer, but most of the album he isn't even a producer. His ear for picking the beats, his lyrics on there, that album's like definitely one of the best things to come out in the UK in a long time.
The one thing that we haven't really gone into detail about yet is one of your other businesses, because you've been involved in so many, like, but Baby People. You said you and Rukus started. That's about all we've kind of had so far. But go into more detail.
So Baby People it's the UK's first hip hop school. So there's lots of people up and down the country that might teach breakdancing or graffiti or like individual tutors, but we teach all 5 elements of the culture. And essentially it's a school, but it's a school in the daytime, but it's a school for young people that aren't in mainstream school. So that might be because they're got behavioural issues or stuff going on at home, so they can't manage day-to-day normal school. It might be because they've got special education needs. It might be because they've come into this country and their English isn't their first language and there isn't a space for them in a mainstream school. So for a variety of reasons. But what we get consistently with these kids is that they might not have connected with what school's got to offer, but they connect with hip-hop culture and black music culture, whether that's graffiti art, whether it's breakdance, whether it's MC and DJ and music production, etc. They connect with the culture and they feel ownership over it. And they come into our building, and very much like when we first started, the kids will I remember the very first class we ever did, it was with these 3 girls, and everyone has said, these girls are terrible, they're wild, they're bad, they're this, that, whatever. And we walked in, and at the time, me and Rukus, we had stuff on the radio and MTV and all this Channel U and all this. And they walked in and they go, and Derby's a small town. They were like, you're Baby J and you're Rukus. And they was good as gold for us because we were, to them, like them and from round the way and came up in the same areas as them. And so how they viewed the system or the school, they didn't view us like that. And it's the same model today. So essentially, the guys that work for me, we've got singers and rappers and DJs and graph artists and b-boys, and the kids come there and they see people that might be called, you know, Steady or Bazza or Jam Jam, and they dress like them and they talk like them and they're from the same areas as them, and so they don't feel like it's Sir from school in a certain tie. And that role model thing of them having that moment going, you know what, this person, I might not have fitted in that environment, but this person, you know, they got a job, they pay their rent, they drive a car, you know, they're a parent, you know, there's a place for me, I can be like them, and that's the most important thing. So not all of them are going to go on to be like famous rappers or graffiti artists, whatever, and that's not important. What it is it's important that they see there's someone like them that functions in the world, but plays a part in the community and society, and has got something to offer, and they can see themselves in that person. So yeah, we started 24 years ago. It started off with a few kids and me and Rukus. Now there's about 40 staff, 40 something staff. Some, you know, kind of office admin, and then lots of artists. We've got a base in Derby and a base in Nottingham. And obviously that's the main thing we do in the day, but then, you know, in the evenings we put on events, people run studios from the different rooms, there's different artists recording in there, producers, rappers, singers, there's, you know, vocal sessions, there's music theatre, there's the b-boys use the space. So we try and make sure it's available for people from the community to use as much as possible. You know, so sometimes there's wakes that are there, or, you know, like birthdays that are there and stuff. So we try and just have it as a space, because it's like a big warehouse with loads of music studio rooms. Just, you know, to kind of give something back. When we was originally in a much smaller space, and when we opened that, it was because when we was coming up, there was nowhere for us to go. So we were like, if we ever get somewhere with the music, we want to set something up for the kids, so they got somewhere to go and record and do their music. So it's a bit of a hub. Like most of the artists that have done stuff in the city, at some point they're gonna come through and use the studios, or be on a course, or just come and get advice, or, you know, Rukus will be mentoring them or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So it's just like a bit of a home in the city for people to be able to come and kind of develop their craft and be around other creatives that are doing stuff. So
What's the plans for that in the future?
I mean, you know, like it's been running 24 years. So really it's just about trying to, at this stage, you know, it's growing every year. So it's, you know, been quite successful. And at this stage, it's just trying about, you know, setting it so that it can be there for another 24 years. You know, we're trying to make sure it's very secure as a business, and things are well run. Unfortunately, we've got a great team. Like the artists we work with are like super dope. They want that they're the ones that make it work. And then my team in the office, you know, we've got some really talented people there, and it's just setting it in a way that it's going to continue to be, because it's a resource for the city, it's a resource for the community.
As you're speaking, I'm just kind of thinking, you know what, with the councils in every place, they've taken away all the youth centres and all that kind of stuff. So, in effect, what you're doing is that.
Yeah, and as the youth centres slowly disappeared, we start to fill more and more of those spaces, you know. And we sometimes get bits of money from the council, the Arts Council, we get funding from them, so they fund some of the kind of artist development and the event side of what we do. But essentially, you know, like if you strip it back from council, Arts Council, government, local, whatever, you know, it's our community. You know, I grew up in Derby, you know, I grew up in some of these areas, and, you know, a lot of these kids, you know, their aunts, their uncles, their cousins, their brothers. I got kids coming to me now where I knew their mums and dads, you know, like it's like, so we have a responsibility for our community to, and even if we might work with 100 kids a year, but even if there's one of them that doesn't go to prison, one of them doesn't get stabbed, doesn't end up on drugs, we won. Do you know what I mean? And there's more than one every year. So like for us, it's like we have a responsibility. All of us have a responsibility for our communities and the people we live around. And you know, and most people, you know, like you get to a certain age and you have to think, what can I do? And that, it might not be setting up an organisation, it might just be, you know, you helping here, or, you know, when there's a funeral, you supporting the family, or you're looking out for the kids in your area. But it's just that sense of like, it's us, regardless of any government, council, grant, fund, we have to look after our own. community and be there for them. And that's really what Baby People is about. It is a business. It makes money. It pays people's wages. I'm okay with that. But, you know, bigger than that, it's there as something that supports the city. Do you know what I mean? The kids in the city and the youth in the city.
It's mad, as you're talking, I'm sitting here and thinking, you remind me of somebody doing all this. Not necessarily in the sense of the business, but, you know, because obviously I was there and I saw the way the kids were with you, the respect levels they have for you and Rukus, yeah? And I've been in the building, I've seen it. We've filmed outside there. Thanks for letting us use that space, by the way. But the person that you remind me of is, do you remember that film, To Sir With Love? Sidney Poitier.
Oh, yeah.
That's what you remind me of. The unruly kids that wouldn't listen to nobody. But someone came along and was like them. Just in a suit.
You know what, with the kids as well, like the kids get a raw rap. They're often like, the kids are this, their problems, and like, they're kids.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they're just kids. And then, you know, you just need, and, you know, I've even seen it with the parents where the schools will be like, oh, the parents are this and the parents, like, they just come from the same, you know, they're dealing with life. And I think it's easy to dehumanize them and go, this kid committed this crime, or this kid did this in school, or they beat.
Ask why.
Yeah, but it did like, okay, so they made a mistake, you know, but.
Yeah, but also ask why. What made them do that? Because when we did things, it's because of reacting to something else.
Yeah, and they're probably still, you know, a good kid, you know, like with a decent heart. So they just, you know, someone needs to look at them and go, I believe in you, you know. Like,
see, because we haven't got much time left, but I really want to say this little bit here. You can go through life and do a million things right and nobody seems to care. But you do one thing wrong in 10 seconds of your life and it's been held against you for the rest of your life. I think that's effed up.
We have a saying at our place that I say this to kids regularly, and that's like, when you walk through the door at Baby People for the first time, I don't care about what happened before that. Do you know what I mean? I don't care what your file says or what reputation you got, or none of that matters. As long as you come through that building and you treat everyone in the building with respect, then everyone's going to treat you with respect. Do you know what I mean? And
best way.
And then if a kid has a bad day and they get in a fight or they smash something, then you had a bad day, you know, like, tomorrow we'll work that out. You know, like, it's not, we all have bad days, right? And as friends and family, we forgive each other and we work things out. You know, in 24 years, like I say, we have 2,000 kids a year. We've excluded 2 kids. Well, 2 kids we decided we couldn't work with. And that was really because there was so much risk to them and to other kids. And we work with thousands of kids a year. So we don't give up on them, man. Like, it's a home for them.
The Sidney Poitier of UK hip-hop.
It's the title I've always wanted. So there you
go. Bro, do you have any final words?
Nah, just, you know, if you can tap in and follow the music, thesystemdon'twork.com. We're on Instagram, The System Don't Work Records, The System Don't Work, you know, listen to the music. Try and support it, you know, and, you know, I hope people appreciate the work and, you know what I mean? Reach out. It's nice to know there's a community of hip-hop out there and things like this is beautiful to keep pushing that. So, yeah.
All right, guys, you heard it here. So, finally, right, he was probably the first person I ever asked to come in and do an interview here. And, you know, he's a busy guy, as you heard, 24 years in, you know, basically with Baby People and, you know, all the management stuff he was doing, all the videography and a number of different things. So finally got him here, and I'm so glad we did because, like, there's so much knowledge. There's so much stuff that he's done that even I wasn't aware of. You know, we speak on a regular basis and all that kind of stuff. We did lose contact for a little bit, but, you know, and I wasn't aware that he was doing all these things. So, yeah, big up Baby J for all the positive stuff that you're doing. The change maker, as I said. You know, this is a guy that's making a difference. And, you know, it's sad to say, like, when you think about it, it's the council that should be making the difference, but they're not making the difference. So certain people take everything into their own hands and make that difference.
And big up 0521 for the culture there, supporting all of us. It's an important thing. New Blade and Baby J album coming soon. I said it here, so it's facts.
We haven't even started recording it yet.
Mad. Coming soon, yeah? Blade and Baby J, watch out for it. It's going to be a classic.
Yeah, we haven't even started recording, so there's a bit of delusion going on there.
No worries.
There's a bit of delusion going on there, but yeah. But anyway, look, Thank you very much for watching. Thanks, Baby J, again for being here and making the journey. And we need to get Ness in here.
Yeah, we're gonna sort it out.
So we have to sort that out. Can we sort it out in the next 10 minutes?
We're gonna sort it out real soon.
Okay.
It might be a video calling, but we're gonna sort it out.
All right, we'll do that. Make sure you go and check out Baby J's social media pages, the website. I'm going to put all the details in the description below. And, you know, just spread the word. Let them know about what Baby People is doing. And if you're in the local community, whether you're in Nottingham or in Derby, and you got any kids there that also would fit into what they're doing, or just try it out, make sure you reach out to them, because you never know, it could change your life. All right, thank you for watching. Take care. Peace.